Previously, in the world of Mega Izuku. After unlocking the hidden potential of the Mega Arm and rising through the ranks of UA with his unique fusion of quirk and technology, Izuku Midoriya faced enemies more powerful than ever, both human and artificial. But even as the dust settled, a greater mystery loomed, the true origin of his power, and its connection to something far older than quirks themselves. Now, new threats emerge from the shadows, and Izuku must push past his limits once again as his journey continues, with upgraded gear, unfamiliar faces, and the heavy cost of heroism. This is where the next chapter begins. Welcome to Part 2, Chapter 6. Midoriya had just put on his shoes and was about to leave when his mom walked up. Izuku, do you have everything you need? Yes. Supplies? Yes. Notebook? Yes. Handkerchief? Mom, I know that I'm not missing anything, he said in a slightly exasperated voice. His mom could be such a worrywart at times. Izuku? She asked nervously. Yeah? I just wanted to say that I am so proud of you, she said with a small smile. Midoriya returned an embarrassed smile as he said goodbye. He walked out of the apartment and began to jog towards the train station. He wasn't able to go as fast he wanted to because of the UA uniform he was wearing. The pants were too long, constricting, and clean to run in. While it was an annoyance, it was also a good symbol. That and the entire uniform proved to the entire world that he made it into UA. Just putting it on felt like a dream that he didn't want to wake up from. After he got on the train, he was looking around to see if anything interesting happening. There was the usual cramped crowd of people around him, the somewhat overwhelming smell of body odor and perfume, and the shaking of the train itself. Overall, pretty normal. About 40 minutes later, the train reached his destination and he got off. The rest of the way to the school was already known to him as he went this way when he took the exam. The path he took soon led to the front gates of UA. He stopped right in front of them and took in the sight. Ahead of the gates was the huge glass building that was the main campus. The actual building consisted of 4 structures arranged in a perfect square. Each of them were connected to the adjacent structure by what seemed like a corridor. Looking down, the front of the building had a small garden with some trees, grass, and a couple of flowers. Beyond them was the entrance. There were 3 big red doors that were marked by numbers 1 to 3. It probably meant that you should enter the door with your grade number. This is it. This school holds my future in it. I need to go there and grab that opportunity, Midoriya thought as he took his first step into his new school. It took a lot of willpower not to squeal in pure euphoria. My future is harder to find than I thought, he thought as he ran around the hallways. He was trying to find the classroom he was assigned to, 1A. That proved to be a challenge since the school was like a maze. He had to find it in the next 2 minutes or else he will be late. After some more searching, he saw a sign that stuck out of the wall that read 1A. He rushed over to the area near the sign to finally find the door. The extremely large door. The door that almost reached up to the ceiling. Geez, they must have built it for people with gigantification quirks, he said to himself while staring in awe. As he reached to open the door, he breathed a quick prayer. Please don't let Kachan and the glasses boy be in the same class. When he opened the door, the first thing he heard and saw proved that any higher being that heard him was just a jerk. Get your feet off the desk. That is official UA property and we shouldn't be disrespecting that. The boy with the glasses yelled at another boy whose feet were propped on the desk. What? Someone shoved a stick up your ass or something? Bakugo asked cockily. Fine, let me start over. My name is Tenya Ida and I am from the Same Private Academy, the now identified Ida said while extending his hand. Bakugo took his greeting another way. Same, huh? So you think that makes you better than me? I gonna have fun blowing your head off this year, he said with a menacing tone. What? You dare threaten me, your own classmate? Are you sure you are in the right class? Ida asked in shock. Before their dispute could continue, Ida noticed Midoriya standing at the door. The entire class then turned to stare at him. Midoriya just froze at the many pairs of eyes that were on him. Suddenly, Ida started marching towards him. Hello. It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is. He started to say before Midoriya raised his hands to cut him off. Tenya Ida, I heard you. My name is Izuku Midoriya, he said nervously while shakily extending a hand. Ida firmly grasped it and shook his hand at a fast pace. As I said, it's a pleasure to meet you. I first have to apologize for what I did at the exam. It was extremely rude of me to call you out. As well as assuming you were trying to distract that girl before the test started. You shown extraordinary bravery when you saved her and perception for realizing the true intent of the exam. Your actions prove that you are the better student. Ida speedily apologized that left Midoriya speechless. He almost talked as fast as he did during his rambles, almost. While that was going on, Midoriya decided to take the opportunity to try and replicate his quirk. Thankfully, Ida's handshake lasted a bit over 10 seconds, more than enough time to complete the process. Mutant quirk, engine, copied. When Ida finally let go, he planned to apologize for copying his quirk without his permission. "I know you, green blue boy," a familiar voice exclaimed right behind him. He turned around to see the nice girl from the exam. She was also wearing a uniform, to which he internally complimented. "Hey, you're the girl from the exam," he said. "Yeah, I'm Ochako Uraka. You were amazing back there. You were all like pew and the robot went like boom," she said in an onomatopoeic way while moving her arms around to show emphasis. Midoriya started to get embarrassed by how much the girl was complimenting him. "It was really nothing," he said with a slight stutter. "If you're here to just socialize, then you should just leave right now," a bored voice came from behind Uraka. When they turned around, what seemed like a huge yellow caterpillar with a face was lying down on the floor while sipping a juice box. "It took you all 8 seconds to quiet down. That irrationality won't cut it here." "What the heck is that?" all the students thought. The creature then unzipped the front of its body and a tall man wearing all black stepped out from it. There was some type of cloth wrapped loosely around his neck. His face simply told everyone that he doesn't care about anything. "So it's a sleeping bag," they all thought in relief as it wasn't some mutant creature. The man finally spoke after a bit. "Hello class, my name is Shota Aizawa and I will be your homeroom teacher," he said in monotonous tone. "What's up with this guy? He must be a pro if he teaches here, but why does he look so worn out?" Midoriya thought as he tried to figure out who this person was. Before he could access his MP unit, Aizawa took out a one-piece uniform that was red, blue, and white. "Put these on and me out in the field in 5 minutes," he then promptly left the classroom without a second thought. The entire class were confused by what had just happened. When all the class got to the field, Aizawa explained what they will be doing. "You all will be taking part in a quirk apprehension test to see what you are capable of." "What? But what about orientation? We'll miss it," Uraka asked in worry. "If you want to be a hero, you can't waste your time on pointless ceremonies. Here at UA, we are famous for letting teachers run the class. That means I can run my class how I see fit. If you have a problem with that, you can leave this class," he explained with a commanding aura behind them. "Katsuki Bakugo, step forward." Bakugo walked forward to stand right in front of him. "What was your farthest softball throw in junior high?" 67 meters, I think, he replied after thinking about it. Aizawa then tossed him a softball and told him to stand in a circle that was drawn in the ground. "Try using your quirk. Do anything as long as you stay in the circle," he explained. Bakugo first did some stretches and then got in position. He whipped his arm forward and at the last second, made an explosion that propelled the ball farther than a normal toss. "Die," he shouted. Rings of air were left in the ball's wake as it soared into the sky. "Die?" Midoriya thought as they watched the ball finally begin its descent. Landed on the ground and rolled for a bit before it stopped. The ball itself was shockingly in perfect condition despite being launched by an explosion. Aizawa watched with a neutral face while he held his phone. "This test will serve as a baseline. You all need to know what your maximum capabilities are. This is the most rational way to judge your potential," he explained while turning his phone to face the students. It read 705.2 meters on the screen. "No way, that's crazy," the yellow-haired boy said in awe. "We can use our quirks as much as we want? This will be fun." The pink-haired girl cheered. Though no one noticed, Aizawa's face changed into a frown. "You think this is just fun and games? That your time here will be easy? For the next 3 years, UA will throw challenges meant to break you. If you think this test will be fun, then let's add a new rule. You will take and be scored on 8 physical tests. Whoever comes in last will be deemed to have no potential and be immediately expelled," he said with a devilish smile forming. Most of the students had the same reaction. "What? But that's not fair. This is only the first day, we can't get expelled like that," Uraka argued. "Life's not fair. Natural disasters, large-scale villain attacks, catastrophic events that wipe out whole cities. We can't choose what will happen in the future. A hero's job is to adapt to it and resolve it," he countered. "So you better give this your all. Go beyond, plus ultra style." 50-meter dash. The first test was quite a simple one. How fast can you complete 50 meters? 2 people would go at a time and a device at the end would call out the time they got, which was accurate to 1/100th of a second. The first 2 to go was Ida and a green-haired girl who looked a little like a frog. They lined up at the start and began when the device gave the start off. Ida was running quite fast in long strides with the engines on his calf shooting out air. The frog girl was hopping long distances and landing before resuming the cycle. Ida finished first with a time of 3.04 seconds while the girl got 5.58 seconds. Ida cursed under his breath something about a second gear. Next was Uraka and a blonde boy with a tail, which made Midoriya look twice. Before they started, she touched her clothes and her shoes. When they began, Uraka was running normally while the boy used his tail as a springboard. He claimed first with at 5.49 while Uraka got a slow time at 7.15. Still, she seemed quite happy with her time, saying how it was still faster than junior high. The next two were the pink-hair girl who unintentionally got all of them in this predicament and the sparkly blonde French boy that Midoriya recognized from the exam. As the both got ready, the boy turned around with his hands behind his head and crouched. When the start was called, he jumped as fired a sparkly blue laser from his belt that made him fly. The pink hair ran normally. Midway through, the boy's laser fizzled out and he stumbled to the ground. He quickly got up and shot another beam, but his opponent already passed him and got there first. With his time of 5.51, he made some comment about his quirk and stomach. Finally, it was Midoriya's turn to go with Bakugo. As he walked to the starting line, he materialized his suit on. Everyone, except Uraka, Ida, and Aizawa, were completely shocked. "What the heck? What is that?" the yellow-hair boy asked in shock. "It's just my quirk," he answered casually. The student's reaction wasn't unexpected. It's not every day you see someone change into a blue suit. Though, the bigger issue was the look that Bakugo was giving. It was a mixture of shock, disbelief, confusion, and loathing rage all in one face. It sent a slight shiver down his back. Now is not the time to get overwhelmed, it's time to not get expelled. When he stood ready, an idea came to mind. Maybe I should try the new quirk I copied, he thought. He quickly activated the engine quirk and watched as the change happened. His bodysuit changed from light blue to a clear white. The gauntlets, leglets, helmet, and briefs changed very little from a deep blue to navy blue. Biggest change he saw was the exhaust pipes around his ankles and at the bottom of his feet. Other differences were that his helmet changed shape to be more aerodynamic with a visor in front of his face. His MP unit quickly did a scan and informed him all the basics to the suit. At this point, you could officially say that everyone was shocked, even the teacher. "Where the hell did that come from?" the same boy asked again. Everyone was too surprised to even say a word. Aizawa raised an eyebrow to it. All Midoriya could do was give an apologetic shrug. The look Bakugo was giving him just got more worse. Why wasn't the device starting already? Almost as if it read his thoughts, the device gave the alert to get ready. Ignoring all the looks, Midoriya kneeled forward so that his back knee almost touched the ground. That earned confused expressions from everyone. No one noticed the heat building up in the exhaust pipes. "Go." The second the word was spoken, everyone understood the strange position he was doing. Fire came out his feet and he shot forward like a bullet. His legs slid across the ground and his body was kept low to decrease air resistance. Bakugo tried using his explosions to boost himself. But alas, his attempt was futile to the speeding opponent. Midoriya flew past the finish line as the device called out his time of 2.08 seconds while Bakugo got double the time at 4.15. Almost everyone's jaw dropped at what they just witnessed. "You have to be kidding me," that was the only thing said in the silence. Midoriya wasn't paying attention to that and had deactivated the quirk. Checking the weapon energy for it, he saw that 1/6 of the total energy was gone. Though suddenly, "Damn it, Deku. You better start explaining that where you got that fucking quirk," Bakugo shouted as he charged towards him with explosions forming on his hands. Right before he got there, the explosions suddenly stopped as a cloth restrained Bakugo. Looking at the source, they saw Aizawa was holding the cloth while his eyes were glowing red. "I hate using my quirk too much as it gives me serious dry eye. So you better calm yourself down before I expel you," he threatened. Upon closer inspection, Midoriya saw a familiar pair of golden goggles around the hero's neck. He recognized him as the Eraser hero, Eraserhead. After finally not trying to lunge at Midoriya, Bakugo just glared at him and walked back to where he was standing. Nodding to himself, he walked back to the group of students. Aizawa then cleared his throat and called the next pair. "Grip strength." The students had moved from outside the field to inside a gym. They were given devices that would measure how strong their grip was. Once Midoriya was given his, he squeezed the handle as hard as he could. After a bit, he heard a beep come from it. Stopping his effort, he glanced at the screen to see what his score was. The screen read 480 kilograms. He whistled in impress as he knew that was way above average. He was about to share his score with the teacher when he heard someone shout. "No way. 540 kilograms? Dude, you are such a beast." The short ball hair has exclaimed in excitement. Turning around, he saw that the person was the tall masked guy with 6 arms. He had 3 of his hands wrapped around the handle, giving him extra force. Midoriya wasn't jealous at all for the guy. In fact, he was happy for Guy to get recognition as he seemed to be the seclusive type. He continued his walk towards the teacher and showed him his score. The look in his face wasn't the same as the first test, as he probably wasn't surprised anymore. He wrote the score down and told him to wait. Standing long jump. The next test was outside again. They were given a sandbox and they had to jump over it. The scoring worked on whether you made it or not. Bakugo went first and he used his explosions to launch himself over. Next was the laser boy, who used his laser to propel himself over as well. When Midoriya came, everyone looked at him with observing expressions. It was honestly starting to creep him out. He took 2 steps back and ran forward. On the last step before the sandbox, he jumped up. He actually got pretty high, so he did a flip or 2. Landing neatly at the other side, he extended his arms out to do the cliché landing pose. Aizawa muttered something about showing off. Repeated side steps. This test was simply just seeing how fast you can do side steps. Midoriya got an average score, much to the mocking surprise of some of his classmates. The person with the best score was the boy with balls for hair. He placed the balls down on either side of him and bounced off them. He made sure to expressively rub it in Midoriya's face. Ball throw. This test was actually the one Bakugo demonstrated at the beginning. You had to take a softball and throw it as far as possible. As long as you stayed in the circle, you could do anything. When Uraka was up, she looked at the ball and touched it with her 5 fingers. It momentarily glowed in a pink light. She lightly lobbed it into the air and it slowly rose up. And it kept rising. It was just floating up continuously before it was out of sight. Aizawa then turned his phone towards the class, to which it showed the infinity symbol. Infinity? A few of the students shouted. As people were talking about it, Midoriya's name was called to go next. Immediately, everyone dropped what they were doing and focused on the boy. Lord, did they love making him feel awkward. As he stood in the circle, he weighed his options. In his normal form, he would only get a slightly above average score. He wanted to be completely sure that he wouldn't get expelled. His Mega Buster wouldn't work as it would just destroy the ball. His mom's quirk? No, it attracts objects, not repels them. Ida's quirk? That would most likely make him go out of bounds. Kachan's quirk? Actually, that would work out. He then transformed his to his explosion quirk. This suit had a red bodysuit with small white lines bordering the armor pieces. The actual armor pieces were a bluish-purplish color that was extremely satisfying. The helmet had 2 white circles on top with green dots in the middle, resembling a pair of goggles. On the back were 3 red triangles that looked like an explosion. His left arm gauntlet changed so that it would have the same white circle and green dot as the helmet's, with a part sticking out to cover the back of his hand. And it's just the Chain Blast suit from Mega Man 11. Look it up. There's more? The black hair boy with weird elbows exclaimed. That comment went unnoticed as they were more focused in what Midoriya was going to do. He pulled his right arm back and threw the ball as hard as he could. It flew quite high for a normal pitch, but it was a letdown when you consider the previous scores. That's it? I expected more with that flashy suit of yours, the ball hair boy said smugly. Before he could say anything else, Midoriya did something unexpected. He swung his left arm in an upward arc. Right afterwards, a couple of black balls with orange dots on them appeared and quickly floated in the direction of the now falling ball. Everyone watched in curiosity as the mysterious objects got closer to the ball. When they got pretty close, Midoriya snapped his fingers. The objects then detonated, collectively causing a huge explosion. The ball soared back up into the air by the force of the blast. When it landed, Aizawa showed the score to be 768.1 meters. This time, no one had anything to say. The rest of the tests were quite exceptional to him, especially the endurance running, where Aizawa literally had to force him to stop because he running for too long. After all the tests were over, they gathered in front of their teacher. He clicked a device that made a hologram appear. This is your rankings based on overall score. There is no point in reading them myself, so do it yourself, he said. Midoriya quickly looked around the top spot to see what place he was in. His name was in the second place slot, right beneath someone named Momo Yaoyorozu. He chuckled to himself, saying how he was so close to first. At least he wasn't last place. Speaking of which, the person in last place was Mineta, who turned out to be the boy that acted smug when he won the sidestepping test. He was on the floor bawling his eyes out over the prospect of being expelled. "Oh yeah, that threat of expulsion was just a lie. I wanted to motivate you to do your best," Aizawa suddenly said. "What?" Most of the class yelled in surprise and anger. A tall raven-haired girl shook her head. "You guys didn't know? I thought it was obvious." "And you knew?" Midoriya thought as he stared at the girl in disbelief. Aizawa then dismissed the class for the day and told them to pick up a syllabus in the classroom. Everyone soon filed off the field, most with annoyed expressions on their faces. As Midoriya was walking towards the gate, he couldn't help but chuckle at all the things that had happened today. It was a pretty interesting way to start his first day in high school. "Hello Midoriya." A shout behind him which he quickly recognized as Ida. True to his guess, Ida showed up right next to him and matched his pace. He began talking about what he thought of the tests. It was clear that he too was slightly miffed at the lie they were told, but he dismissed it as being necessary for a prestigious school like UA. He realized that Ida wasn't a rude person, just someone who cared a lot about school. A lot about school. "Hey guys, are you going to the train station?" Another shout came behind them. Again, it was easy to recognize the bubbly voice of Uraka. When she caught up to them, the both stopped walking to talk. "You're Ida, right? And you're Deku," she said while pointing at both of them. "Huh? Where'd you get that from?" Midoriya asked. It had been quite a while since anyone but Kachan called him that. He didn't want that to start over again. "Yeah, isn't that what Bakugo called you when he ran towards you?" She asked for confirmation. "My actual name is Izuku Midoriya. Deku is an insult that Kachan uses to make fun of you," he explained. "That's not very nice of him," Ida remarked. Uraka gasped and did a quick bow. "Sorry, I didn't know that you saw it as an insult. Though in my opinion, I kinda like it. It sounds like, you can do it, if you get what I mean." "Deku it is," he shouted with his face turning red. "But I thought you saw it as an insult?" Ida asked accusingly. Midoriya just covered his face and mumbled something about her changing the meaning. After that situation, the three newly formed friends made their way to the train station. Chapter 7. The next day, school took a different turn from what it did yesterday. They had to take regular courses such as math and English. Ironically, English was taught by Present Mike. "Okay class, tell me which of these sentences are incorrect?" he asked at a reasonable volume after writing 4 sentences on the chalkboard. So boring, almost all the class thought in unison. Present Mike suddenly shouted that English was super cool and that they shouldn't be bored by it. After the core classes, lunch was held in the middle of the day. All 3 grades ate lunch together in the cafeteria. Thanks to the presence of the cooking hero, Lunch Rush, you could purchase pretty good food for a surprisingly cheap price. Midoriya absolutely gushed when he found out that a hero made the lunches. In the afternoon came basic hero training. When the class sat down, they noticed that their teacher wasn't there. Suddenly, speeding footsteps could be heard were getting closer to the classroom. The door suddenly slid open quickly. "I am here, coming in like a normal person," All Might shouted as he leaned in through the doorway. "Whoa! All Might?" Half of the class yelled in disbelief. The other half had impressed looks in their faces. As he marched to the front of the room, someone commented that he was wearing his Silver Age costume. When he got to the podium, he turned towards the students. "Hello students. This class will teaching you all the need-to-know basics about being a hero. Think of it as Hero 101. For today's exercise, you will be performing in combat trials," he yelled as he pulled out a flash card with the word battle printed on it in orange. At the word battle, Bakugo grinned maliciously and Midoriya gulped in nervousness. "In addition, we have a surprise for you All Might said while pressing a button in a remote. When he did, the walls to his right slid out to reveal racks. There were 5 racks that held 19 suitcases that were labeled in numerical order. "Your hero costume designs that you submitted before school started have just arrived and you will be wearing them for today," he explained while doing a flexing pose for some reason. He then told them to change into their costumes and meet him in ground beta. Afterwards, he swiftly dashed out of the room in a blink of an eye. As the students got up to get their suitcases, some of them noticed something odd. There was 20 students in total in the class, yet there was only 19 costumes. Did one of them forget to register their costume designs? As they thought that, no one noticed that Midoriya had walked out right after All Might left. A couple of minutes later, All Might was waiting in front of a large tunnel with Midoriya standing closer to the tunnel. He had gotten there first as he didn't have or need a costume from the government. His suit could technically be counted as one. Before, he was freaking out about how to put down a costume design since he was registered as quirkless. After a quick phone call with All Might, he found that not only could he still register his new quirk, but he also didn't have to submit a costume design because his quirk already gave him one. He asked the officials at the registration about it and they told him the same thing. When everyone arrived, it was like a Halloween party. Elaborate and unique costumes ranging from simple clothing to suits of armor to bodysuits. They already looked like pros if you didn't factor in their young faces. All Might complimented them on how cool they looked. "Hey Deku, where is your costume?" Uraka asked when she noticed him in his blue suit. "This is my costume." "What? But I thought that was just your quirk? How is it your costume?" she asked in surprise. After explaining to her the circumstances, she nodded her head in understanding. "That's pretty great. You can instantly get it on and off and it fits you so perfectly. They made mine skin tight, which is a bit too much," she said while scratching her head. Now that he looked, he saw that she was wearing a skin-tight bodysuit. It was conforming to almost every detail on her body shape. He turned his head away in embarrassment, saying that it looked nice. The purple ball boy, Mineta, had a thumbs up and said how that was why he loved this class. Sooner or later, he was going to get what was coming to him. "All right. Are you ready, you bunch of newbies?" All Might asked with a flashing grin. "As I said, you all will be doing indoor combat. While most fights happen outside, the most cleverest of villains always work in the shadows. Illegal deals, lairs, and other heinous acts. This test will simulate the experience of fighting a person." Right afterwards, the questions started rushing in. How will wins and losses be decided? Can we hurt our opponents as much as we can? Will we be given another expulsion threat? How will teams be arranged? Isn't my cape just dazzling? After a few seconds of it, All Might silenced them and pulled out a very tiny script book. Here is the scenario. The villains have hidden a nuclear bomb in the building. After 5 minutes, the heroes must enter the building and retrieve the weapon or capture the villains with capture tape within 15 minutes to win. On the other hand, the villains win if they protect the weapon until time runs out or they subdue the heroes. Each of you will be randomly split into teams of 2, he explained. Isn't there a better way to make teams? The person in armor, who was now easy to identify as Ida, asked. Think about it. Pros are often forced to work with others on the spot, Midoriya suggested. After an affirmative nod, Ida bowed an apology and let him continue. All Might then brought out a box with lots. He asked that each of them to take out a number. Whoever had the same number as you will be your partner. After the lots, Midoriya found out that he would be partners with Uraka as Team A. Isn't that great, Deku? We get to be partners, she said enthusiastically. He agreed with much less energy. As the teams were voicing their opinions on who their partner was, All Might brought out 2 more boxes. One was white with the word heroes printed in black and the other was black with the word villains printed in white. I declare that the first matchup will be, these guys, he shouted as he stuck his hands both of the boxes and pulling out 1 ball from each box. The ball from the hero box had the letter A on it while the ball from the villain box had the letter D. Midoriya and Uraka are the heroes. Bakugo and Ida are the villains. Be prepared to start in 5 minutes, he shouted. Midoriya instantly freezed up when he heard that he was fighting Bakugo. Knowing him, he would ignore the point of the exercise and target him instantly. Even with his mega powers, it would take at least 2 people to even have a chance of taking Bakugo down. The problem was that Uraka didn't seem to have a combat-oriented quirk, as she was only shown to make things float. To make matters even worse, Ida was skilled enough to devise some plan to make it harder for them to retrieve the weapon. Hey Deku? Are you listening? The sudden question snapped him out of his analyzing. He turned to see Uraka giving him a strange look. Sorry, did you say something? He sheepishly asked. Yeah, I was wondering if you had some sort of plan. Well, I'm not too sure of what to do. We are at a huge disadvantage, mostly due to Kachan's skill and Ida's speed. The only chance we got is me using my knowledge of Kachan for us to try and predict his moves. He was close to starting one of his rambles, but he was able to stop before it could get out. Uraka still seemed very optimistic. Don't worry, we can do it. We can take them on. Right afterwards, the 5 minutes were up and the 2 entered the building. Separate to the testing ground was a surveillance room which All Might and the rest of the students were. They could watch each test from cameras that were placed in and out of the building. The reasoning was to both have the students learn from other battles and to stop matches if they get out of hand. Now, they were watching Midoriya and Uraka slowly make their way through each hallway. Who do you think is gonna win? The black-haired kid with weird elbows, Sero asked. I don't know. Both Bakugo and Midoriya scored high on the apprehension test. The pink-haired girl, Ashido replied after thinking. Nah, I'm rooting for Midoriya. Come on, You guys saw how he had those suits that made him extremely fast and have explosives, the yellow hair, Kaminari argued. Now that you mention it, his opponents have those quirks. Bakugo has an explosion quirk while Ida had an engine quirk, the raven hair girl, Yaoyorozu said while scratching her chin. While they were discussing the possible outcome of the match, All Might focused entirely on Midoriya. This was the first time he would use his trained powers against a person. I hope you're ready, he thought. As he and Uraka turned the next corridor, he was constantly scanning for any signs of Bakugo. The range of his scan allowed him to basically see what was inside the building. Currently, Ida was standing in a large room with the bomb next to him and Bakugo was roaming the same floor as them, albeit on the other side. His plan was to sneak up on Ida and have Uraka distract him so he could dash towards the weapon. It was simple in theory, but the biggest problem was ironically Bakugo. What should we do? Uraka asked. At first, he came up with nothing. Then as he began to think a bit more broadly, a crazy idea popped in his head. Here is what we'll do. I'll go distract Kacchan and lead him away. You need to go retrieve the weapon from Ida. What? But it's not safe to take them on one by one. We should take him down as a team, she yelled as quietly as she could. Midoriya shook his head, but if we try that, we won't be able to retrieve the weapon. If he can hold his own for long enough, time will just run out. This is the only way. Uraka tried to suggest other ideas, but it was immediately shot down after he explained how ineffective they were. After a few seconds, she looked at him as though she was going to make one last attempt to convince. Kacchan has close proximity to location. Immediately, he tackled Uraka out of the range of the explosion Bakugo made when he appeared from the corner. How did he get here so fast? I stopped scanning for just a moment and he just popped up out of nowhere, Midoriya thought as he got in a defensive stance. Bakugo waved the smoke away with one hand while not taking his eyes off his opponent. He looked ready to blow up anything that annoyed him the slightest, which so happened to be Midoriya. Uraka. Go now and get the weapon. I can't leave you to fight Bakugo. Uraka persisted. If you don't go now, we may lose the exercise. So just go. He gave her a determined smile that oddly put her at ease. Reluctantly, she ran past him and Bakugo to the location where Ida was. As he expected, Bakugo paid little attention to her as he was focused on fighting him. Rearing his left arm back, he got ready to counterattack. Like he predicted, Bakugo quickly charged at him. He reared back his right arm to deliver a fierce hook to the jaw. But if only it weren't so predictable. Midoriya rushed towards him and jumped over his head. Out of all the possible moves he could have done, no one was expecting him to do such an interesting dodge. Once he landed, he spun around on his right foot to give Bakugo a swift roundhouse kick to the back of the head. His body pitched forward and rolled to avoid falling flat on the floor. After rolling a few times, he turned around and his face had changed from anger to disbelief and even more anger. What the hell was that? You shouldn't be able to even lay a fucking hand on me. You're just a pathetic Deku. His face was transitioning back to his pure anger expression. I am not that anymore. I am not the Deku who can't do anything, I'm the Deku that can do anything. In response, Bakugo then gave him a murderous glare. Well, then I'll just have to beat you down so badly that you won't be able to do a thing. With that, he fired 2 explosions and launched towards him. Midoriya tried firing 2 shots to hit him midair, but they were easily dodged. He ducked at the last minute as Bakugo released an explosion right where his head used to be and flew past him. Quickly turning around, he was about to fire again when he noticed a gloved hand right in front of his face. An explosion hit him point blank and sent him back a few feet. Thankfully, his helmet took most of the force and he got away with a small burn. Bakugo then dashed towards him with his arm outstretched, most likely to grab his face and release multiple explosions. Before his hand could reach Midoriya's face, Midoriya raised his left arm to block it. Bakugo's hand grabbed the blue gauntlet instead and let off a few explosions. The armor piece wasn't damaged in the slightest. Nice try, but I got you now. That fucking pea shooter of yours only fires from your left arm. Since you can't aim at me, you can't hit me with it. Bakugo stated smugly as he readied his right hand. To his surprise, Midoriya just chuckled in response. That's a very logical deduction, Kacchan. I'm impressed you were able to make that theory. There is only one small problem with it, he said in a song voice. Suddenly, Midoriya raised his Mega Buster on his right hand up to Bakugo's face. Before he could react, he got hit point blank by a regular shot. It felt like someone hit with a hard punch. Stumbling back a few steps, he glared at Midoriya with rage. That's it. You're dead, he shouted as he charged at him again. He was determined to show that nerd his place is below him. As Midoriya watched Bakugo charge at him, he tried formulating a plan of action. His opponent was an enraged battle-hungry bomb who would not stop until he was broken and beaten. Even if he did make it out, he still had to help Uraka get the weapon from Ida. There wasn't that much time left, so he had to finish this battle quickly. He used up most of his tricks, meaning he couldn't use them again since Bakugo would know what to expect and exploit it. The only trump cards he had left were his charged shots and replicated quirks. Once that thought ran across his mind, an idea popped up. Right before Bakugo could hit him, he dashed away and began running. "What? Why is he running?" the red-hair boy, Kirishima, asked when he saw Midoriya running away from his opponent. Almost everyone was confused by his actions. Maybe he realized Bakugo was too strong for him and opted to distract him instead. The purple-hair girl with strange earlobes, Jiro, suggested. If that's the case, it's useless since it relies on his partner succeeding, which isn't happening, Yaoyorozu said while looking at another screen. It showed Uraka trying to get the weapon from Ida, but it was failing horribly. He was moving the weapon away from her every time she got close. With his speed quirk, it was impossible for her to get the weapon on her own before time ran out. In general, the hero team wasn't doing too well in the exercise. When they turned back to Midoriya's screen, they saw he wasn't there. Where the heck did he go? Kaminari asked in confusion. The screen only showed Bakugo running around, still trying to find his green-hair opponent. Speaking of which, he was coming to an intersection that went left and right. He took the right passage and disappeared behind the wall. It seems that there is no camera for that area, All Might thought out loud. While they were nodding their heads, the unexpected happened. In a blur, Bakugo suddenly flew back from the way he went and crashed into the floor. What the hell? Most of the class, All Might included, yelled in surprise. How the hell did Bakugo get sent flying? As if to answer their question, Midoriya walked out from where Bakugo came flying from. He had the white and blue form that he used during the apprehension test. Hey, isn't that the same thing suit he used during the test? The frog girl, Asui, pointed out. He probably used the engines on his feet to boost himself to power and knee attack, Yaoyorozu speculated. Back to the two fighters, Midoriya was surprised by the fact that actually worked. When he first thought of using the surprise attack, he immediately expected Kacchan to dodge it and blast him in the back. So he made a contingency plan that we was about to execute. He didn't expect the frontal assault to work perfectly. There wasn't much time to ponder as Bakugo was starting to get back up. Midoriya knew it would be bad if he recovered, so he quickly changed to his normal form and started charging. By the time Bakugo had looked up, he was already finished charging a level 1 shot. He fired at his opponent, which hit him directly in the chest and caused him to get knocked over. He tried charging another shot, but Bakugo was not going to let the same thing happen again. He quickly got up and rocketed towards him with an explosion. Midoriya tried firing again, but it was again dodged. Once he was in front of him, he then delivered a left hook right to the stomach. Not letting up, he started to rain multiple punches on the blue boy's body. To add a little kick, he used an explosion on each punch to give more damage. Midoriya tried raising his arms to block upcoming attacks, but he then aimed to knock them out of the way. You still think you can beat me, nerd? Bakugo asked menacingly as he kept at the attacks with unrelenting force. Midoriya ignored it and kept trying to protect his body. Suddenly, Midoriya brought his right fist up and landed a strong uppercut to the jaw. That made Bakugo dazed for a few moments, which was more than enough time. Quickly, he changed to his explosion form and brought his left arm up in an arc. Explosives appeared in front of the arc and attached to Bakugo. Almost instantly, they detonated and sent him flying back a few yards. Copying his opponent, he kept launching barrages of explosions to keep him away. Each group of explosions sent Bakugo even further away. When the explosion weapon energy had only a quarter left, he stopped his bombardment to take a breath. This quirk is way stronger than I thought. I should train with it more to increase the amount of time I could use it, he thought. A good distance away from him, Bakugo was slowly getting up from the attack. Damn it, how the hell are you even able to fight me? You've always been under me, yet now you are almost beating me. I will never let you win, Deku, he shouted in anger as he brought his arm up. His hand moved to his grenade-designed gauntlet and pulled back the top to reveal a pin. Having a bad feeling about it, he ran a scan over it. It apparently worked like both a reservoir and grenade. It would store up sweat from Bakugo's body and release it to make a huge explosion. What worried him was how much sweat was currently in the gauntlet. Are you insane, Kacchan? The amount of force that blast will make is enough to destroy this entire corridor, let alone aiming it at a person, Midoriya shouted in fear. His warnings, including the ones that All Might was giving once he too found out the nature of the attack, fell deaf to Bakugo's ear as he had a hysterical smile. "Don't worry. You'll be fine as long as you dodge," he yelled with hysteria in his voice as he pulled out the pin. A second later, a gigantic explosion plume came out from the gauntlet. The diameter was able to cover most of the corridor, leaving the sight of a blinding and scorching ball of fire barreling towards him. With nowhere to run, he did the only thing he could do. Brace for impact. He raised his arms up to cover his face. The explosion engulfed him in a sea of fire, and the last thing he felt was extreme heat and unbearable pain before everything went dark. Boom. After the blast covered Midoriya, the live feed was cut out. The force of the explosion was shaking the entire room they were in. Everyone was aghast by what they just witnessed. "Midoriya. Come in, young Midoriya." All Might called into his microphone urgently. The lack of response made the mood even darker. "I can't believe he just did that," Kaminari said in disbelief. "I thought we were training to be heroes, but he took this battle way too far," Sero said. "There is no way that he survived that. A pro probably couldn't survive that blast without needing serious medical attention, let alone a teenager," Jiro pointed out. That comment made them fear for the worst. Half of the students were shocked by the move Bakugo just did, while the other half lamented over the possibility that a fellow classmate could have been seriously injured or worse. All Might was a mix of both feelings as he brought up the feed to the room Bakugo had just entered. As he walked into the smoking room, Bakugo looked over the aftermath of his powered-up explosion. There was a huge hole in the wall where the blast struck that was big enough to fit a car through. The entire room was full of both smoke and rubble from the explosion. He was glad he requested those gauntlets. They were the best things he has ever seen. "How do you like that? Thinking you can just hide your quirk from me and just start flaunting it around. You haven't and never will be better than me, and I just proved it right fucking now," he said as he smirked. The nerd was probably too injured to even move a muscle. He turned around to go find his teammate and deal with round cheeks. What he didn't expect was to see a blue cannon that was glowing yellow pointed right at him. "What the" was all he could say before he was blasted back. The shot hit him with the force of a dump truck. He flew across the room and crashed down right in front of the hole that he had made. Too dazed to even stand up, he felt something being forcefully wrapped around his arms that tied them together. "Captured," Midoriya said in triumph as he finished wrapping the capture tape around Bakugo. After letting out a sigh of relief, he dropped to his knees in exhaustion. He was lucky to be conscious after the explosion hit him. It had brought his health dangerously low to 1 bar above the critical state. Had it gone a bit lower, his body would have been put into a hibernation mode that would take a few days to wake up from. When he got up, he noticed Bakugo had walked past him and was distracted by his amazing power. Taking that chance, he snuck up behind him while charging. Once he hit him, he decided that he should capture him instead of trying to beat him. That proved successful as he had wrapped the capture tape around his arms, making him unable to continue. Unfortunately, he realized that he had to help Uraka get the weapon and ran off before Bakugo could even start yelling. Everyone in the surveillance room were dumbstruck by what they had just saw. Midoriya had snuck up on Bakugo, hit him with a cannon shot, and captured him. What shocked them the most was seeing him move after tanking the blast. How the hell did he survive that? Mineta yelled in disbelief. He took that blast like a champ and took down his opponent. That's the manliest thing I've ever seen, Kirishima yelled with a huge grin on his face. All Might sighed in relief that his student wasn't killed by the explosion. He also announced the result of the battle. Bakugo has been captured. He is unable to continue. When Ida and Uraka heard the announcement, they both had different reactions. Deku did it. He won against Bakugo. She cheered while doing a small hop. He captured Bakugo? That means he must be heading up here right now, he exclaimed. Uraka grinned as she knew they were guaranteed to win when Midoriya got there. She quickly charged towards Ida again to take advantage of his shock. Unfortunately, he noticed and moved the weapon to the other side of the room. Even if he is coming, there isn't enough time left for him to get here. He can't get to this room fast enough by taking the stairs. It's too late to win heroes, he states while attempting a villainous tone. It only served to make Uraka stifle a laugh by how serious he was to acting like a villain. Uraka, how are things going? Midoriya's voice spoke from the earpiece she had. Not good, Ida has been keeping the weapon away ever since I got there. Where is he right now? He's over by the windows. Why? She asked. I need you to lure him to the door. Once he's there, give me a signal. Once the earpiece went silent, she charged towards Ida again like normal. He simply carried the weapon away and settled in front of the door. There is no point in trying. You can't keep up with my speed, he mocked. Now. The moment she shouted that, the door slammed open and Midoriya flew into the room. He tackled Ida to the ground and held him there. Ida tried struggling against him, but it was proved to be futile. Without needing any more directions from her teammate, Uraka rushes towards the weapon and touched it. Retrieved, she said with a huge smile on her face. Uraka has retrieved the weapon. That means the hero team wins. All Might's voice boomed from the speakers in the building. After everyone had gathered in the surveillance room, All Might began the critic. Good job. You four performed exceptionally well for your first combat training. Now class, who was the MVP of the match? Obviously Midoriya. A few of the students yelled. Midoriya blushed at the praise he was receiving and Bakugo was silently fuming. After they calmed down, Yaoyorozu stepped forward to explain. Midoriya had started the training exercise with a logical plan. He was able to adapt and improvise it when Bakugo showed up unexpectedly. He kept a cool head and was able to execute some dicey moves to secure his capture of Bakugo. To top it off, he also helped his teammate retrieve the weapon in the end in a smooth and efficient way. All of these actions resulted in very little collateral damage. Bakugo seemed to be driven by a personal grudge against Midoriya that blinded his sense of logic, which led to him firing an explosion which caused significant damage to the building his team was protecting. Ida lost because he was overconfident and failed to anticipate how fast Midoriya could get to the room. While it was an attempt to play the role of a villain, you should always expect everything. Uraka did fairly well herself as she stuck to the plan and was able to execute the new plan. Her only problem was her hesitation at the beginning. Once she was finished, almost everyone stared at her with amazed and confused expressions. Yes. I was thinking something along those lines as well, though you pointed out some additional details. All Might said. Yaoyorozu thanked him and stepped back into the group. Now, on with the next group. When they had all finished their battles, they went to the classroom to pack their things before they left for the day. Midoriya was in the infirmary for most of the battles since he had to heal his injuries. Surprisingly, Recovery Girl's Quirk worked on him. He also found that any injury he gets in his megaform transfers over to his actual body, proven when he saw burn marks littering his body. When he got back to the classroom, some of the students walked over to him. Hey, Midoriya. That was some awesome fighting you did back there. Kirishima heartily said while clapping him in the back. By the way, my name is Eijiro Kirishima. My name is Hanta Sero. I'm shocked you were able to beat Bakugo. He's super strong, Sero said with a grin. I'm Mina Ashido, and I just want to say that your quirk is amazing, Ashido gushed as she was bouncing around. One by one, each of the students introduced themselves to him, often complimenting his battle. After he embarrassingly thanked them, they all walked out and headed back home to prepare for their next day. Chapter 8. Of all the things he expected to see before he entered the school, a huge mob of reporters was not one of them. Midoriya had just got there to witness the madness that was the media. All of them would practically pounce on any student they saw and ask them the same exact question. How would you describe your experience with All Might as a teacher? The desperate looks on their faces was quite obvious. You could literally see the hunger in their eyes for any info they can get. He had tried sneaking around them by sticking close to the wall. By not making that much sudden movement, no one had glanced in his direction yet. He had almost reached the gate, but he was spotted by a female reporter. You. Tell us about All Might. In an instant, he was surrounded on all sides by people with microphones and cameras. He started to sweat nervously at all the attention directed towards him. All Might is a good teacher. He, points out things that are useful for being a pro hero. That's all I've got, he said as he tried to back away from the mob. From the corners of his eye, he saw Uraka and Ida also being hounded on. Uraka was doing some sort of flexing pose that didn't make sense and Ida seemed to be giving a full-out explanation and lecture. Both of them were able to get away since the reporters got bored of them. They entered the gates and sighed in relief from escaping. Midoriya tried to go towards them, but the mob blocked his escape and kept asking questions. Can you let me go? I need to get to class, he asked. As he expected, they completely ignored him. He also noticed that the mob seemed to be slowly moving away from the gate, pushing him along with them. Look, it's one of the teachers. One of the reporters called out. They all turned in the direction that he was pointing to see Mr. Aizawa casually walking. Taking that chance, Midoriya slipped through the distracted mob and bolted towards the gate. He got through and slowed his pace to a jog as he mentally thanked his teacher. Before he walked in the building, he swore he heard something metallic slam shut. When he got to class, he sat down in his seat and waited. The rest of the class were talking with each other and making jokes about what happened outside. A minute later, Aizawa came in and silenced all of them. I saw the footage of the combat training from yesterday. You all did okay in terms of how you handled it. He then turned to Bakugo. Bakugo, you have lots of potential. Don't waste it by acting like a kid. He just grunted in response. Now, we have to do a homeroom activity to do. Sorry for bringing you up late, but you have to. He started to say. Is it going to be another special test? The class thought worryingly. Pick a class representative, he finished. The entire class sighed in relief and then mayhem ensued. I won't be class rep. No, I want to do it. I'll take it. You probably need me to do it. Only someone as dazzling as me can be it. I want to be the leader. I will make all the girls' skirts be 30 centimeters above the knee. Let me do it. Almost everyone was stating that they want to be class rep. The situation would make any government teacher both laugh and feel disappointed. Silence, please. They all stopped shouting and turned their heads towards the voice. It turned out to be Ida who shouted. The role of leading the class carries great responsibility. It can't be decided just by whoever wants to do it. That person has to be trustworthy. If we want to make this a democracy, we should hold an election. The ironic thing was that he was raising his hand the highest. But we've only known each other for a small amount of time. We can't easily know who is the best candidate. Besides, won't everyone just vote for themselves? Asui argued. That is exactly why whoever receives multiple votes is the most trusted candidate. Don't you agree, Mr. Aizawa? He asked. Aizawa replied that he didn't care as long as they finished. After the ballots were cast and drawn, the results were in. Most of the students had 1 vote, proving the claim Asui made. Yaoyorozu had 2 votes. The person with 3 votes was. I got 3? Midoriya exclaimed. Bakugo immediately slammed his hands in his desk and demanded for who those 3 votes were. While Sero made a snarky comment, Uraka was nervously whistling while looking the other way. After that scene calmed down, Midoriya was named class rep and Yaoyorozu was named deputy rep. She was perfectly calm about it while he was a shaking mess. When lunch came, Midoriya was eating his lunch with Uraka and Ida. They were relieved to have a break from the classes, except Midoriya. He was picking at his food, even though that food was one of his favorites. I don't know if I'm qualified to be class rep, he said after a few moments of silence. Yes, you are. Your judgment skills and determination make you an excellent person to lead the class. Well, that's the reason I voted for you, Ida said. What? But I thought you wanted to be class rep? You have the glasses and everything, Uraka asked. Does she just say anything that's on her mind? Midoriya thought in shock. Ida shook his head in disagreement. There's a difference between wanting the position and being qualified for it. That's what I rationalized to be correct. Rationalized? The way you talk, are you a rich boy? Uraka suddenly asked. Ida had a look of shock momentarily. It then changed to one that was full of pride. Well, I knew I wouldn't be able to hide it for long. You are right, my family has been full of pro heroes for generations. Do any of you know the turbo hero, Ingenium? Instantly, Midoriya went full on nerd mode. Of course. He's a famous pro hero with 65 sidekicks working alongside him at his Tokyo agency. Wait, don't tell me. Yes, he's my older brother. Ingenium is a hero who honors the hero code and helps everyone. My biggest reason of becoming a hero is to be just like him. Ida's face was full of determination and inspiration. It was a comforting thing to see someone strive to be like someone they look up to. Rin. Warning. There has been a level 3 security breach. Please evacuate in calm, orderly fashion. The moment after the alarm went off, all hell broke loose. Everyone was scrambling to get away. The screaming quickly turned into a deafening chorus. Level 3? What does that mean? Ida asked. It means that someone has broken into the school. That hasn't happened in years. One of the upperclassmen answered before joining the panicking crowd. Midoriya, Uraka, and Ida got up and tried to evacuate and calm down the students. Nothing they did made a difference as everybody was trying to escape with their lives, which was ironically what the announcement told them not to do. Midoriya and Uraka were stuck in the middle of the sea of students while Ida was shoved against the window. He looked out to see what was happening. To his surprise, it turned out that it was only the media that had broken in. Aizawa and Present Mike were at the front trying to convince them to leave. Everyone. There is no need to panic. He tried to yell, but it was overwhelmed by the yelling and shouting from the other students. No one knew the actual situation that was happening. Ida started thinking of ways to get everyone's attention when he noticed Uraka was close by. A plan quickly formed in his head and he tried moving through the crowd to reach her. Uraka. Make me float. He reached out his hand as close as he could get. After a look of confusion on her face, she touched his hand with the tips of her fingers. Instantly, he felt his weight go away and began to float above the crowd. Pulling up his pant legs, he activated his engine quirk to propel himself. It did, but the position of his engines made him spin crazily as he flew toward the emergency exit door. He hit the wall above the door, grabbed the pipe on the ceiling, and faced the crowd. Everyone. Calm down. Everyone stopped and looked up to see one of the students perched above the door, posing like the icon on the emergency exit. There is no threat. It is just the media. We are students at UA. We should act in a way that honors this school. Almost immediately, all the students stopped panicking and made their way back to whatever they were doing before the alarm. When they got to class, Midoriya made a surprise announcement. He that nominated Ida should take his place as class rep instead. He said that he was more fitted to do it as he was able to handle the panicking students and calm them down. Ida graciously accepted the offer and most of the class supported that decision. After that, Aizawa instructed them on what they will be doing next. Class, you'll be doing rescue training today. That includes earthquakes, floods, and everything in between, he said while holding a flash card that had the word rescue printed in it. Rescue, sounds like a lot of work, Kaminari said with an uneasy expression. Dude, this is the main part about being a hero. The point of being a hero is to rescue people, Kirishima said. While the class discussed, Aizawa continued. We'll be holding this training in an off-campus facility, so we'll be taking a bus. Myself, All Might, and another faculty member will be in charge. Last thing, you all may choose whether to wear your hero costumes or not. They may limit your performance while training, so choose wisely, he finished as he pressed the button that opened the racks. He told them to get ready and then left. As everyone got in the bus, they sat down randomly by anyone. Ida was silently cursing how because it wasn't a standard school bus, his seating arrangement plan was utterly useless. Midoriya was sitting on the same side as Asui, Kirishima, and a muscular guy named Sato. Hey Midoriya, you should know that say whatever is in my mind, Asui suddenly said. What's up, Asui? Call me Sue. Your quirk, those two forms you have remind me of Bakugo's and Ida's quirk, she stated. Some of the other students turned towards Midoriya, hoping for some answer to his strange and powerful quirk. To their surprise, he smiled in response. I'm not surprised that you made that connection. In fact, those forms are actually their quirks, he replied. All the students were both surprised and confused by his answer, especially Ida. What do you mean by their quirks? Yaoyorozu asked. It's simple. One of the many abilities that my quirk gives is the ability to copy and replicate almost any quirk, he explained. What? You can copy quirks? How? Kaminari asked in shock. Well, I found out that there is 3 criteria that must be met to copy a quirk. First, it must be a quirk that I can copy. Quirks like Ojiro and Hagakure are some that cannot be copied. Second, I must make physical contact with someone for 10 seconds. It doesn't matter what they wear, as long as I touch them. Third, they must be in a subdued mood. It can be anything from being happy, sad, or neutral. As long as they aren't angry or suspicious, it will work. That reminds me, sorry for copying your quirk without asking, Ida, he explained while bowing as an apology. Everyone stared at him in complete awe. They thought his quirk was strong before. Now, they realized that it's too overpowered. Really? Try it in me, Ashito exclaimed as she stuck her hand out. Midoriya grabbed it and waited. All the students were focusing on what will happen next. 10 seconds later, he let go and began to change. His bodysuit changed from blue to purple. The armor pieces changed to a lime green color. His helmet changed to look like a lime green transparent water drop with what looked like a water mask over his mouth. His Mega Buster now looked like a nozzle. Holy crap! Some of the guys shouted as all of them watched in amazement. Midoriya took out a clump of loose fabric from the seat cushion he was sitting in. Tossing it in the air, he shot green acid that instantly melted fabric. So, any more questions? The second afterwards, practically all of the class were in front of Midoriya, asking him to copy their quirks and show them what it does. He then spent the next 5 minutes copying and trying out his new quirks. Kaminari's form had a black and yellow design with his cannon looking like a plug that could discharge electricity. Jiro's form had a purple design with headphones on his helmet and a cannon that looked like a speaker that shot out sound waves. Kirishima's was a light red design that allowed him to harden certain parts of his body, which turned a vibrant red in said area. Yaoyorozu's was a red and yellow design with his cannon looking like pot that could pop out any non-organic object, though it took up a lot of its weapon energy. Todoroki's was the most interesting as it had a design that was white on his right and red on his left. There was also 2 cannons, an ice gun on his right arm and a flamethrower on his left arm. One way or another, he copied the quirks of almost all of his classmates. Midoriya, there has to be some limit to that power. You can't just be an all-powerful person with no drawbacks, Sero said. There is a drawback. For each quirk, there is an energy bar. Each time I use that quirk, the energy level will go down. Once it hits empty, I can't use that quirk until I recharge, he explained. You're so lucky to have an amazing quirk like that. It's quite flashy and noticeable. My hardening is strong, but it doesn't look that cool, Kirishima said. No, your quirk is amazing and has lots of potential, Midoriya argued back. The boy with the sparkly costume, Aoyama, said that his naval laser was already pro level, though Ashido ruined his moment by saying how it would always give him a stomach ache. Before they could continue their conversation, Aizawa announced that they have arrived. Once they got off the bus, they all marveled at the huge building in front of them. It bigger than the entire lunchroom. A person wearing what looked like a space suit walked to them. Midoriya and Uraka immediately recognized the hero. It's the space hero, 13. They both squealed in excitement. He's a rescue specialist that has already saved hundreds of people. Okay students, follow me inside. 13 started walking to the entrance with Aizawa and the students following behind him. Once they entered, the sight they saw was amazing. They were on a platform that was higher than the main area of the dome, which had a huge flight of stairs to get down there. Scattered around the area were different environments and situations, ranging from a shipwreck, landslide, a fire, and others. I built this facility to help train and prepare students for different types of disasters and accidents. I call it the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or USJ for short, 13 stated. Hey 13, where's All Might? He's supposed to meet us here, Aizawa asked with annoyance clear in his voice. 13 then leaned over and whispered while holding up 3 fingers. It seems that he did too much hero work this morning and ran out of time. I swear, that man is the embodiment of irrationality, Aizawa grumbled with even more annoyance. Well, let's get on with the training. It won't affect how the students will perform. Turning back to the class, 13 made one last speech. There is 1 no 2 or 3, just a few more things I'd like to mention. You know how my quirk, black hole, works. I can suck up any form of matter and turn it into dust. While that is useful for helping from disasters, it can also easily kill someone. That goes for a lot of your quirks. In this society, quirks are highly regulated and restricted by the government. Even so, there are quirks that can end someone's life with one wrong step. You learn different ways to use your quirks with Aizawa's test. You experience the danger and responsibility of using them against people with All Might's combat trials. This training exercise will teach you how to use quirks to help and rescue people. Remember, the powers you have aren't meant to harm others. I hope you learn to use them to save people. Thank you for listening. The entire class immediately gave him a standing ovation. He's right. The main purpose of his device is to help people and save them from disasters, Midoriya thought while looking at his left arm. Danger. Quirk activation detected ahead. As Midoriya looked ahead to see what his MP meant, Aizawa felt a chill run down his spine and turned around. They both looked to see the fountain in the middle of the area stopped working. Then, the space in front of it distorted and a large amount of purple mist came out of nowhere. It formed a circle in midair and a hand reached out of the portal. The hand belonged to a man with hands all over his body. On his arms, chest, neck, and face were gray dismembered hands that grabbed onto him. As he stepped out, more people came out of the portal. Each of them had an intimidating aura to them, with scary appearances to match. Everyone, stay back. Protect the students, 13, Aizawa shouted once he got his bearings. Midoriya snapped out of the trance he was in and began to step back. It was only then that the rest noticed the crowd of people coming out. Who are they? Is this a part of our training? Kirishima asked as he took a step forward, only for Aizawa to yell at him to stay away. As he put in his goggles, both he and Midoriya said one sentence. Those are actual villains. Chapter 9. As the last villain, a huge and extremely muscular man with a bird head and exposed brain stepped out from the portal. The class started to get scared once they realized that this situation was real as day. The man with hands on him looked around the area and spoke. What? He isn't here? After all that planning we did, it gets messed up by a no-show. Well, maybe a couple of dead kids will convince him to come. The creepy smile he gave sent chill down all their spines. They knew that this was going to get ugly quick. Aizawa had just grabbed a hold of his scarf and was about to fight when Midoriya called him. Mr. Aizawa. It's too dangerous for you to face all of them. Your fighting style is mainly focused on taking down single opponents with surprise attacks, not an entire group. Aizawa just gave a smirk in response. Kid, you can't be a pro if you only have one trick. With that, he jumped down from the stairs towards the horde of enemies. A few of the villains with long-range quirks took position and were aiming to fire at the pro hero. Once he was close, they activated their quirks. Except, nothing happened. What the hell? One of them asked as he tried to use his quirk to no avail. As he tried, a scarf wrapped around his torso and he was kicked right in the gut by the person they were trying to hit. Pulling back the scarf, Aizawa lassoed other nearby villains and slammed them on the ground with extreme force. While no one could see it due to the gold goggles, his eyes were glowing a bright red, indicating the use of his erasure quirk. Oh crap! It's Eraserhead. He can nullify any of our quirks by just looking at us. One of them exclaimed after recognizing him. Almost immediately afterwards, Aizawa flew in and delivered a flying kick to the head, knocking the guy out. Then, one of the villains that had 4 arms made of stone came charging at him with a cocky expression. Try erasing my quirk, he yelled while throwing a punch. It was easily dodged and a strong punch returned that hit him right in the face, sending the man flying into a group of villains. With that, the completely one-sided onslaught continued with Aizawa taking out lots of them by the masses. As the students watched their teacher taking down multiple villains left and right, 13 urged them to run toward the exit. When they finally did, they only got halfway to the door when the man made of purple mist appeared and cut off their route. Hello, students of UA. Sorry for coming here without permission, but there is important business we must complete. We are the League of Villains and our ultimate goal is to end the life of the symbol of peace, All Might, the man said in a professional tone. What? They plan to kill All Might? Midoriya thought with a shocked expression. Even so, it appears that he isn't here. Our sources tell us that he should be one of the teachers that are supervising here. Was there a change of schedule, or something else? The man asked. Stay back, everyone, 13 shouted as he raised up one finger to use his quirk. Before he could, Bakugo and Kirishima jumped ahead of him and hit the mist villain with a hardened punch and explosion. The attack caused a huge smokescreen that covered everyone. Ha! You think we're just going to stand around and let you tear this place apart? Kirishima asked with a confident expression. When the smoke cleared up, they saw that the villain was hardly hurt at all. All it did was remove some of the mist that was covering him, revealing a metal armor on the neck and some clothes. Impressive. Even though you are just students, it's quite obvious that you are very talented, enough so that you could already be pros, the mist villain said. 13 yelled for the boys to back away as he popped open one of his fingers. Before he even got the chance, the villain scattered his mist so that it covered the entire group. Now, I will scatter you across this entire facility so you can meet my comrades, and your deaths. In an instant, almost all of them were sucked into portals that teleported them to different disaster zones. When Midoriya came out of his portal, he found that he was quite high in the air. Gravity took place and he began to fall. Below him, the area seemed to be a rocky terrain with small mountains surrounding the place. Before he landed, he turned so that his feet would hit the ground first. When he did, the impact caused him to feel a small jarring sensation in his legs. He mentally thanked that his suit had shock absorbers in the soles or else his legs would have been broken. Midoriya. You okay? Turning around, he saw that Kaminari, Jiro, and Yaoyorozu were running towards him. Yeah, the fall wasn't the worst thing I've felt, he said with a small chuckle. That's great, but we are in a dangerous situation, Yaoyorozu said while pulling out a metal staff. Once she said that, Midoriya then noticed the large number of villains that were surrounding them. They were moving slowly towards them, each with scary grins in their faces. This is going to be good. 2 hot babes ready for picking. Once we kill those boys, then we can start having fun, one of them said while licking his lips. So, what should we do? Jiro asked with an uneasy expression after hearing that. Yaoyorozu got into a fighting stance, Kaminari started backing away, and Midoriya aimed his Mega Buster. Simple, take them down, Midoriya said before quickly changing into his ear jack form and blasting a huge sound wave towards the villains. They covered their ears' pain as they were pushed away by the force of the waves. Quickly, the 2 girls began their attacks as well. Yaoyorozu charged towards the group and began spinning her staff, striking lots of them in the heads. Any villain that came near them received either a blow to the head or a stab to the chest. Jiro plugged her ear jacks into the speaker in her legs and fired her own sound waves that knocked down some of them. Hey Midoriya. Sound waves are my quirk. Try using one that isn't mine, Jiro shouted as she blasted away 2 villains that came at her. Have it your way, he shouted back as he dodged a punch aimed for his head. Changing into his engine form, he boosted and delivered a hard knee attack to the gut. That sent the villain flying back a few meters. Noticing something from his peripheral, he then boosted over to Yaoyorozu and landed a flying kick on a villain that was sneaking behind her. "Thanks," she called as he jumped away and rammed into a group. He barreled right through them and toppled them like they were bowling pins. When he stopped, a loud bang and a flash of light came from behind him. Turning around, it seemed like Yaoyorozu had thrown a flash grenade as she was wearing black goggles and the villains in front of her were covering their eyes. A small group of villains tried running towards him, to which he then changed to his explosion form and threw explosives towards the ground. When they detonated, it kicked up a big veil of dust. "Ah! I can't see a thing," one of them yelled as they tried rubbing the dirt that got in their eyes. While doing that, one of them felt something wrap tightly around his torso. Before he could look down, he was roughly yanked into the air and then slammed down into his own group. The dust cleared up to show Midoriya in a form that was white and orange. His cannon has changed to resemble a dispenser. From the cannon was a long and thin strip of tape which was what had been wrapped around the villain. Swinging it around, Midoriya threw the man around like a flail. "Geez dude, no mercy," Jiro commented as she watched him release the man and sent him flying away over the mountaintops. "Sorry, I really wanted to try out Sero's form and the technique was from what Mr. Aizawa did in Duck," he suddenly shouted as he changed to his normal form and fired 2 regular shots. Jiro quickly ducked to avoid the attack, which had hit a person trying to sneak up and grab her. The shots both hit him in the face and left him dazed. Midoriya then jumped over Jiro and tackled the man down, using his tape form to tie the arms together. "Thanks for the save," she said. "No problem, though it seems like someone might need it more," he replied while pointing. She turned to see Kaminari running away from a few villains chasing him, screaming similarly to a little girl. Jiro immediately stifled a laugh that was noticed. "Is it really necessary to laugh at your friend being chased by people who want to hurt and kill him?" Midoriya asked with an accusing expression. Yes it is," she replied before letting out a full-on fit of giggles. "Not funny guys," Kaminari yelled as he barely dodged a stab from a knife. Sighing in disappointment, Midoriya then started to charge and aim his cannon. After a few seconds, he fired a level 2 shot at the villains chasing his friend. The blast took out all of them at once. "Thanks man, I owe you one. I wish that I could help out, but my quirk isn't good for fighting with friends," he panted while leaning on Midoriya's shoulder for support. "Well, tell me how your quirk works and then we can think of a way for you to use it here," Midoriya asked while getting his cannon ready to fire at anyone that got too close. "My quirk is electrification. It allows me to cover my entire body with electricity. I can release and discharge it to the surrounding area, but I can't control what direction it goes in. It would just shock you guys as well," he explained. "Wait, you can cover yourself in electricity? I think I got an idea," Jiro suddenly said. "Really?" Kaminari and Midoriya waited to hear what her plan was. She gave a mischievous grin in response. "I have a bad feeling about what she's going to do," Midoriya thought worryingly. Suddenly, she did something that no one anticipated. She lifted her foot and kicked Kaminari towards a villain that was coming towards them. Once he bumped into him, Kaminari instinctually used his quirk and covers his body in electricity, electrocuting the man. "Jiro! You can't just kick your teammate towards an enemy," Midoriya exclaimed with a shocked expression. "So? It worked, didn't it?" Her smirk only grew larger. Back with Kaminari, his face had changed to a confident smirk once he realized that he was doing damage. "Whoa! This is what I'm talking about. Don't worry guys, you can leave it to me," he said as he ran towards another villain and electrocuted them as well. Midoriya just sighed and continued fighting the villains. With the addition of Kaminari to their attacking, they were taking down villains even faster than they already were. By then, unconscious villains were scattered around the entire area. Though, more would always come from nowhere. It was like the zone had an infinite amount of them. Soon, their stamina was running out. Yaoyorozu and Jiro had used their quirks so much that they were too tired to move. Kaminari was releasing weaker bolts of electricity, and Midoriya was almost out of energy to keep up with the high pace of fighting. "Damn, is there no end to these villains?" Jiro asked in exasperation. Midoriya was trying to keep his cannon up to fire at any moment. Yaoyorozu was crouching in the floor with what looked like pain or concentration. Suddenly, she opened her eyes and spoke. "Okay, it's finished." A moment after she said that, her back glowed pink and a huge blanket popped out and covered them. "What, you think a blankie is going to protect you?" one of the villains asked mockingly. Feeling the blanket, Midoriya noticed that the material was thicker than that of a normal fabric. "You are looking at a sheet of insulation 100 mm thick. You're up," Kaminari. Yaoyorozu proudly said before closing the opening by holding it down from the inside. Kaminari smirked once he realized what she meant. Thanks, now I don't have to worry about frying my friends. He then discharged a large voltage of electricity that spread around. It electrocuted all the villains nearby, knocking them all out. The attack left burn marks littered across the empty ground. The three students slightly lifted the blanket to see the aftermath of the attack. Midoriya sighed in relief when he saw that all of the villains were taken out. That's a relief, he said while turning towards his friends. He didn't even get the chance to look at both of them before Jiro jumped in front of him yelling, "Don't look." "Gah! What the heck?" he yelled as she put her hands in front of his eyes. "What are you so worked up about?" "Yaoyorozu, cover yourself up," Jiro shouted while looking towards her friend, whose entire upper body was exposed. It didn't take long for Midoriya to realize what was happening as he immediately blushed a deep shade of red while turning around. Yaoyorozu quickly remade the top of her outfit so that she was covered up. Her face was slightly red in embarrassment. "Oh okay, it's safe to go out," she said with a small stutter. Jiro removed her hand from Midoriya's face and they all took off the insulated blanket. Looking around, they saw that the entire ground had minor scorch marks everywhere with little wisps of smoke floating around. All the villains were unconscious, albeit doing a small twitch here and there. Midoriya whistled in, impressed by the power of Kaminari's quirk. "Wow, you did great at finishing off the rest of them. Nice job, man," he said while turning to where Kaminari was standing. He expected to see him grinning in pride and bragging on how he had saved them. What he didn't expect was to find Kaminari walking around with a weird expression on his face. He had a wavy smile with eyes that were simple white circles with a black dot. His hands were making a thumbs up and his arms occasionally moved back and forth. The weirdest thing was that he was only making one sound, wei wee. Midoriya walked in front of him and waved his hand right up to his face. There was no reaction whatsoever. He and Yaoyorozu had a confused expression while Jiro was on the ground, laughing her head off. "This might be a drawback for his quirk," he said with an uneasy tone. "Yeah, one of us may need to help him. It doesn't look like he can do simple tasks alone," Yaoyorozu said. "Now we need to plan our next move. Now that all the villains here are out of commission, we can safely get out of this zone without any more ambushes." "Hold up, let me check first," Midoriya said before scanning the area. He searched around the part of the zone that led out to the main area as that was the most likely place for an ambush to happen. Fortunately, no heat signatures were detected in that area. He was about to give the green light when he remembered what happened at the entrance exam. He had failed to notice Uraka since he only checked a specific area and not everywhere. Not making the same mistake again, he stared to scan the entire area. It was lucky that he did that because there was a person that was hiding under the ground. The person was close enough to the surface so that they could easily get out. As it was, Kaminari was standing in front of the spot. Midoriya then raised his cannon and started to charge up. "What are you doing?" Yaoyorozu asked in confusion. Putting one finger to his mouth to signal her to stay quiet, he aimed at the spot and fired a level 2 shot. When it hit its target, the ground around it exploded and the villain was blasted out. He had some form of skull mask that covered his face. He landed a few meters away, unconscious. "What the hell?" Yaoyorozu and Jiro shouted once they saw the villain. "I saw him hiding under the ground. He probably was going to attack when we let our guards down. Now we can move out," he explained. "Yet again, thank you for the save." With that, the group descended down the mountain after a few minutes of rest. Midoriya was carrying Kaminari on his back since he was the only one who had enough energy to do it. Even so, he still was moving at a faster pace than the girls. "Midoriya, can't you slow down?" Jiro shouted from behind him. "There isn't time to slow down. Villains are attacking our friends and we need to help them as soon as possible," he argued back. She groaned in response while Yaoyorozu chuckled in an exhausted voice. "Ugh. Damn you, Kaminari. While we have to walk on our own, you get to be carried. I wish I could get a lift as well," she groaned. "How about you guys use me as support?" Midoriya suggested. The girls agreed and put one of their arms around his shoulders to help them. While it did make the walk faster, the close proximity to the girls was making him very flustered. "Are you all right? Your face is red?" Yaoyorozu asked when she noticed his blushing face. "It's nothing, really. Let's focus on getting out," he quickly answered. At the pace they went, they were able to get out of the mountain zone in 3 minutes. Chapter 10. Once they got close to the main plaza, Midoriya set down his 3 passengers. After a few seconds of freaking out by how close the girls were to him, he and the others started to plan out. "So, what should we do next?" Jiro asked. We should probably avoid the plaza since that's where Mr. Aizawa is fighting most of the villains. Going there would most likely end up with us fighting Yaoyorozu explained. But shouldn't we try helping him? We don't have to directly enter the fight, but we should do what we can to help Midoriya suggested. The other two pondered on the thought for a few seconds. While it would be dangerous to go there, it would provide the chance help their teacher take out the remaining villains. I'm all in for doing that, Jiro suddenly said. Yeah, we're heroes in training. If we can't handle a little danger, then there wouldn't be a point in enrolling into this school, Yaoyorozu said with a smirk on her face. Kaminari kept giving a thumbs up and making that incoherent sound. When they all agreed to the plan, they quietly snuck closer to the main plaza. Once close enough, they got into the water that bordered the area. It provided a great cover as their only heads stuck up from surface level. As they observed, they saw multitudes of villains were lying unconscious on the ground. Damn, Mr. Aizawa did that all by himself? Not even all of us together would be able to handle that many villains, Jiro whispered in awe. While he did agree, Midoriya was also looking around for the three villains that seemed to be the most dangerous. The guy with hands on his body was standing still, faintly chuckling to himself. The mist villain that warped them was not there, probably in another one of the zones. The bird monster was nowhere to be seen as well, which was a bit worrying. The thing was almost as muscular as All Might is. It could mean that it has some form of super strength. He hoped none of his classmates were fighting it. Ugh! A pained scream echoed from his right, which sent chills running down all four of their spines. Turning his head in that direction, his stomach dropped as he had just found the bird monster. It was holding down Aizawa, with one hand on his arm and the other in his head. Aizawa's arm was bent at an unnatural angle with exposed flesh showing in his elbow. His head was being shoved into the ground hard enough to make a small crater. Blood was pouring freely down his face. There was already enough blood around him to form a big puddle of it. Had it not been for the fear that all of them were feeling, they would have thrown up from seeing that. What the hell is that? Jiro whispered. I don't know. Whatever it is, we need to avoid at all costs, Yaoyorozu said with a scared look. Midoriya was about to argue that they couldn't leave their teacher, but even he knew that it would be pointless. If that thing could take down a pro hero, they wouldn't stand a chance against it. Maybe if they distracted it long enough to get him out of there, but they didn't know how fast it was. As he thought that, the hand villain began to speak. What do you think of my pet, Eraserhead? It's the bioengineered anti-symbol of peace, Nomu. It was made to take down All Might himself, so don't be too sad that it beat you that easily, he said while monologuing. Wait, it was made to beat All Might? That explains what they meant by having plans to kill him, Midoriya thought. It also guaranteed none of them stood any chance against it, as it was made specifically to take down the number one hero. Wait, made? How do you make a living weapon strong enough to overpower a hero? After the Nomu slammed Aizawa's head in the ground again, black mist materialized next to the hand villain. The mist villain appeared and the two began to discuss. So Kurogiri, did you kill 13 and the kids? The hand villain asked. Sorry Shigaraki, 13 is only incapacitated and injured. As for the students, they managed to overwhelm me and one was able to get to escape, Kurogiri apologized. Upon hearing that, Shigaraki started to scratch his neck. At first, it seemed like a normal itch. Then, it gradually got faster and tougher till the point that he almost drew blood. Damn it, Kurogiri. If you weren't our escape route, I would use my quirk to disintegrate you to dust. Shigaraki screamed with extreme annoyance in his tone as the itching hit faster. His hands then stopped and lowered in defeat. Well, that's it for this plan. With the pros coming, this mission has gone up in smoke. Game over, back to the starting screen. And I was really excited in finishing this today. Wait, does that mean they're leaving? Yaoyorozu asked quietly. Hell yeah. We get to live. Jiro cheered as silently as she could. Midoriya was happy as well since this trouble would finally be over. It would be bad though since they were getting away and they might try something else. Though, that's what confused him the most. Obviously, UA will buff up their security after this is over. The villains won't get another chance that easily, and they are just running away. He continued to observe them so see if they were going to retreat. They weren't making any moves at the moment, so that could either be good or bad. Maybe we are safe, he thought to himself. Then, he saw something that made all the blood in his body run ice cold. The hand villain, Shigaraki, was looking at them. Worse of all, he had a smile that made every instinct in his body scream for him to run away. Let's leave All Might some souvenirs, shall we? He said maliciously. Suddenly, in the blink of an eye, he appeared right in front of them. His hands were inches away from Yaoyorozu's and Jiro's face. Midoriya had barely turned his eyes to react. Normally, one would think he was using a normal physical attack. But his threat to his comrade held some frightening information. He said that he would use his quirk to disintegrate him. Along that as well was how the skin on their teacher's elbow seemed to be decayed. If Midoriya's hunch was correct, then his two friends would be killed the moment the hands touched their faces. He had to do something to save them. Immediately changing to his engine form, he used max thrust to grab Kaminari with one hand and tackle both of the girls out of the way right before the hands made contact with the other. Gah! Jiro yelled as she was suddenly being shoved in the water by something slamming into her. She had no idea what had just happened since it went by too quickly. Yaoyorozu was in the same situation. Midoriya ignored their reactions and swiveled around to face the villain, who was turning to look at him. Not letting him get another chance, he changed to his explosion form and sent an arc of explosives towards the villain. They detonated right in his face and caused big explosion, followed with a veil of smoke. Slowly putting his arm down, he waited to see for any signs of movement. Once the smoke cleared, his jaw dropped. Instead of the hand villain being taken out by the blast, the Nomu that was holding down Aizawa had now just blocked the blast. Faster than the eye could see, it ran at absurd speeds from his prey to in front of his master. Now that his speed was confirmed, almost all hope of even distracting it was utterly destroyed. Well, those were some interesting powers. They are just like power-ups in games, where using one gives you a special ability, Shigaraki said with mild interest. While I would love to learn more about you, you made me mad by trying to blow me up. Nomu, deal with him. Immediately after the command was given, Nomu practically warped in front of Midoriya and grabbed his arm. Oh no, he thought before he was thrown into the air. At the height he was at, he could see the entire interior of the USJ. It would have been pleasant had it not been for the fact that he would soon be crash landing. True to his statement, gravity did its job and he plummeted down to the ground. When he landed headfirst, he saw black dots appear for a bit and everything felt disoriented. It took a second for it to go away. Getting back up, he turned back to the area that he was just thrown from. It was shocking to see how far he was actually thrown. Yaoyorozu, Jiro, and Kaminari with Mr. Aizawa had gotten away from the hand villain, even though he was only focused on him. Though, he did notice that the Nomu was not among the group there. That would most likely mean extreme danger. Behind you. The MP unit practically blared in his head to emphasize the warning. Leaping forward, he barely missed the hammer slam that was aimed at him. While it didn't hit him directly, the air pressure alone was able to send him rolling a few meters away. Once he stopped, he looked up to see the damage it had done. The ground beneath it was completely shattered and destroyed. Had he been hit, there probably wouldn't even be a body to bury. The Nomu then brought its arms back and prepared for another attack. Crap. What do I do? I can barely dodge its attacks and it's too strong for me to survive an attack. The only chance I have to wear it down, Midoriya thought quickly to himself. Changing into his electrification form, he fired a bolt of electricity that struck the Nomu in the chest. The attack did way less than it should have. It had damaged the beast by a small proportion. The only way you could tell was by the very small scorch marks on where it was hit. But if it's able to put a mark on it, a full-out discharge could take the thing down. It should have, but there was small factor that made it pointless. The scorch marks that were made quickly disappeared and it looked like it hadn't even been hurt in the first place. There's no use in trying to fight my Nomu. With its shock absorption and regeneration quirks, it's impossible for you to win. Shigaraki laughed mockingly. Midoriya glanced over at him what he had just said, something that confused him. Unfortunately, it was a bad move. The Nomu has appeared in front of him and threw a punch at his face. It barely missed by a small distance as Midoriya crouched quickly to avoid the devastating attack. The passing fist was just a few centimeters above him. Ignoring the buffeting winds that were behind him, he changed to his engine form and boosted past it from underneath. Once he got a reasonable distance away, he changed back to his normal form and started charging up. His body was ready to drop everything and dodge the second the Nomu makes any moves. Instead, it was just starting back with lifeless eyes that honestly creeped the living shit out of him. Miraculously, the charging was finished without any interference whatsoever. Taking aim, he fired the level 2 shot. The blast hit the Nomu directly in the chest and it did practically nothing. The attack that was capable of tearing down metal and knocking out people with the one hit did hardly any damage to it at all. The only thing it did was make a small indentation, which quickly healed. It didn't even look phased in the slightest. You have got to be kidding me. It tanked one of my strongest attacks like it was nothing, Midoriya thought in shock. How sad, nothing you do is enough to stop my Nomu, Shigaraki said with a creepy gleeful expression. I think I'm done playing around with you. Finish him. Before anything else could happen, Midoriya changed back to his engine form and boosted backwards. It was good that he did, as the moment afterward, the spot he was just at was completely obliterated by a downward punch. He realized that fighting the Nomu was pointless as it was just too strong. If he could distract it long enough so it doesn't attack his classmates, the pros would show up. He quickly spun his legs to the side and shot off to the right. The abrupt change in direction would hopefully make it harder for the Nomu to catch him. True to his assumptions, the creature always missed as it wasn't able to turn quickly enough to keep up. Unfortunately, the engine weapon energy was nearly depleted. A few more seconds of sustained movement or one big burst would empty the last of his reserves. Deciding the latter, he released one last burst of speed to rocket into the air at a 45-degree angle. It caused him to fly a reasonable distance so that he was higher than the entrance platform. Now was his only chance at focusing on strategizing. Now that he couldn't use his engine form for now, he needed to find a form that gave him mobility and speed. The only quirks he could think of were Kachan's and Sero's. The explosion form was probably the most reliable as it made its own forward motion. Right before he could change, the Nomu appeared right in front of him, rearing back its fist to deliver a crippling blow. Crap. No time to dodge, Midoriya thought as he changed to a different form. It was Kirishima's hardening quirk which he picked up from the bus ride. Basic light red design with what looked like two gears attached to the shoulders. The form allowed him to increase defense on certain parts of his body, turning a vibrant shad when using the utmost limit of the power to harden his entire body in hopes of surviving the attack. When the fist connected, it was nothing but excruciating pain. The punch itself felt like he was hit by a freight train going at Mach speed. He could literally feel his suit cracking and breaking apart. Lastly, the force of the punch sent him flying away towards the entrance. He crash-landed and caused a huge crater to form around him. All he felt was pain around his entire body, his vision had blacked out completely, yet he was able to remain conscious. Deku. Midoriya. A few voices screamed that seemed to be close by. After a couple of seconds, he was able to open his eyes partly. In front of him were Uraka, Yaoyorozu, Jiro, Kaminari, and some of his classmates. All had a fearful expression on their faces. "GG guys?" he whispered weakly. "Thank God you're alive, what the hell did that thing do to you?" Jiro asked after a sigh of relief. I tried distracting it for as long as I could until help showed up. In the end, it took me out with a single punch to the guts," he said. Now all of them were more scared. "One punch? That bird creature punched you and it basically put you on the edge of death?" Kaminari exclaimed. Midoriya strangely just chuckled when he heard that. "Well, it was made to take down All Might. I'm more surprised how I'm still alive." After he said that, he checked to see how low his health was. Shockingly, his health was past the critical state. How he was still conscious was a complete mystery to him, perhaps adrenaline. Had he not used Kirishima's quirk, he would have been blasted apart. "Dear God, and I thought Mr. Aizawa and 13 were injured badly," Sero said suddenly. When he said that, Midoriya slowly glanced around to see that Aizawa was lying nearby. While he was bleeding bad, it was probably minor to what his own body would like when he changed back to normal. 13 was way less severe in that only the back of the suit was destroyed with no other apparent injuries. "Anyone else injured as well?" he asked. "Well, everyone here is fine except for you, Mr. Aizawa," and 13 Yaoyorozu said. He sighed in relief that most of his classmates were not hurt. Though the others were unaccounted for and cannot be sure whether they are seriously injured or not. Maybe the pros were almost here? Maybe they going to burst through the entrance and make sure they all got back alive? Those hopes ran through his head as he silently prayed that everything will just go right for once. Then, he saw it. Coming up from the stairs, the Nomu has just appeared in the line of his sight. It was slowly taking one step after another, purposely taking its sweet time. It was basically telling them that to dread the inevitable fate that would come upon them when it reached them. Instantly, Midoriya paled to a ghostly shade of white. His breathing had been halted for a moment as his mind was too distracted by the situation at hand than just breathing. Even though he wasn't able to move a muscle, his whole body was visible trembling in fear. "Hey, what's wrong?" Kaminari asked once he noticed the huge change in expression from pain to terrified. Midoriya turned to the group and said one word, "Run." They all turned around to see what he was telling them to run from, and they immediately understood when they saw it. "Everyone, run," he shouted loudly. He knew that the leader ordered it to target him specifically. If the others were to get away, they had a better chance to survive while it was finishing him off. That was what he thought his plan would go, but one thing went differently. And no. "We can't leave you behind," Uraka shouted as courageously as she could, even though she was shaking more than him. The rest had similar cases with a face that showed some confidence while the trembling of their bodies says otherwise. It was quite impressive that they were able to look at the monstrosity and not run away immediately. While useful when becoming a hero, it didn't change the fact the beast. "We're gonna die, we're gonna die, we're so gonna die." Kaminari's frightened voice kept getting increased by every step the Nomu made towards them. As it got closer, Midoriya was saying his goodbyes to each of his classmates, even if they only know each for a short amount of time. This would be their place where their short-lived lives would end. Or so he thought. Boom! With a loud crash, the entrance door gets blasted apart by what seemed like blunt force. Everyone near turned their heads towards the direction of the commotion. A haze of smoke was covering the front, making it impossible to see who the person was. "There is no need to fear anymore, students." "Why?" Everyone quickly recognized the booming voice that belonged to their teacher and the most famous hero. "Because I am here." All Might shouted that echoed through the entire USJ. All the students were relieved to see help has finally arrived and right at the perfect time. Though, they all noticed something obviously different with the hero. He wasn't smiling. Instead, it was replaced by a grim frown that showed he was dead serious and angry. Over by the two villains, the hand villain was completely ecstatic by long-awaited appearance of his most hated hero. "Finally. I was wondering when you were going to show up. Now, I can test to see how you fight against my toy." Nomu. Quickly after the command was given, Nomu stopped its previous task and charged at the pro with blinding speed. Unlike Midoriya, All Might was easily able to react fast enough to counter the punch that was thrown at him. When the two fists collided, both of them seemed to be completely stationary while the Nomu's skin was rippling along the arm, much to All Might's surprise. More importantly, the shockwaves of the attacks caused buffeting winds that blew away everything and everyone around. All the nearby students, except Midoriya, had found something to cling on to while he had to grab by Sero's tape so he wouldn't be blown away like a leaf. Back to the two powerhouses, the two exchanged punches after another, each time resulting in a stalemate. Then, the Nomu suddenly grabbed All Might's arm with both of its hands and leaned back to judo throw him. It was able to get him overhead and on the ground, but not do its intended purpose. All Might quickly adjusted his body to land in his feet and then used the momentum to hurl the Nomu over his head with one arm. This attempt worked and it was sent flying down towards the main plaza where its master and the hordes of unconscious villains laid. When it landed, it got up without delay and turned to look at its opponent. "That creature is quite troubling. It's strong enough to tank my punch and not be hurt in the slightest." "How?" All Might said under his breath so that no one would hear. "Which one of them did?" "All Might. That thing was created so it can beat you. It somehow has both a shock absorption and regeneration quirk," Midoriya yelled. All Might was shocked when he heard the last part. "Two quirks? Never mind, questions come later after they are captured. What matters is that they pay for what they have done," he said before charging into the battle. Again, both the heroes and the creature's attacks cancelled each other out. They both continued to throw punches at each other until one could hardly see their arms at the speed they were going. Neither of them looked like they were going to back down from their standoff. The collective shockwaves from all the attacks made what seemed like a hurricane-like effect where winds blew anything that was in the building. The students near the entrance had an even harder time trying to hold themselves down. Midoriya was having it the worse as he barely had the stamina to cling on to anything against the winds. More than once, he nearly lost his grip before narrowly catching himself. He watched as the two powerhouses continued to duke it out. Each time the Nomu landed a punch on All Might, he would return a punch back. Even so, he was able to notice some small details that probably no one else had picked up on. First, All Might was actually landing more hits than taking it was just quite difficult to see with the blurring fists. Second, the Nomu was actually getting pushed back little by little. As each second passed by, those two details were slowly becoming more and more obvious. Though it was taking quite a while, All Might was beginning to get the upper hand. "Weren't you listening to that annoying brat earlier? My Nomu has shock absorption and regeneration. It was made to take you at 100% of your power." Shigaraki monologued, completely oblivious to what was really happening. "Yeah, so what?" He said it had shock absorption, not nullification. "That means there's a limit to how much it can take." All Might yelled as he started to increase the speed and power of his attack. "If this thing was made to take me on at my best, then I just have to go beyond that and force you to surrender." By now, the Nomu wasn't able to get in a single punch in as the attacks kept getting faster and faster. The winds were now extremely intense, breaking up the ground around the two and causing some of the formations in the different zones to sway. The students could only stare in awe at the sight of the intense fight happening in front of their eyes. The amount of power behind each punch was completely incomprehensible. Most likely enough to take out entire buildings from just shockwaves alone. All Might then grabbed the Nomu's arm and jumped into the air. They almost reached the height of the dome ceiling. When they reached the peak of their ascent, All Might spun around and threw the beast towards the ground. The area it landed in was then wrecked from the force of the impact. As it tried to get up, All Might landed right in front of it. "I'm pretty sure you heard these words before, but I'll tell you what they really mean," he said while pulling back his right arm. "Push past your limits. Go beyond. Plus ultra." With a powerful punch, the Nomu was sent flying through the dome of the USJ and into the sky. The force of the punch caused an effect that was almost exactly like an earthquake. Every student in each zone felt shaking of both the ground and the air. The ones that did see were at a complete loss of word at what they just witnessed. Even the villains had dumbstruck expressions by seeing their trump card get sent hurtling into the stratosphere. The next few moments could only be described as rather peaceful and serene, like when a huge hurricane had just subsided and all that was left was a calm aftermath. No. This can't be right. How can my Nomu be defeated like this? You cheated. Shigaraki growled in anger, breaking the silence. He looked ready to brutally murder the next person that he sees. Ha! Give it up, villains, you have lost. Just surrender and turn yourselves in. All Might demanded with a strained smile. Small wisps of steam were coming off his body. It didn't look like much to the average person, but only Midoriya knew the true nature of the smoke. He's at his limit. Any longer and he'll change to his actual form, he thought as he remembered what happened the day he first got his powers, the day he learned All Might's secret. It would be bad if this number of people, especially the villains, were to find out about his weakened form. Hopefully, the villains would surrender and the teachers will make sure the students didn't see. Back with the villains, the mist villain already knew it would be suicidal to charge at the hero now when their ultimate weapon was beaten and more heroes would be coming any second. "Shigaraki, we need to retreat. Our plan has failed and can't let them capture us," he reasoned. Shigaraki snapped his head towards him as if he was going to argue back, but he seemed to calm down after a few seconds. "Fine, let's get out of here. This day has been pissing me off enough," he said before turning to the hero. "All Might, you win this time. But remember, I will kill you in the future and prove how fragile this society is without you." With those final words, both of them were enveloped in the purple mist and teleported to who knows where. All Might then sighed in relief and frustration at the fact how they ran away. 1 hour later. After the pros and police arrived, all the villains except the mist villain and hand villain were captured and arrested. All of them were just your everyday ally thug, meaning they were only there to distract the students. Speaking of which, all the students were found in each zone in a relatively unharmed condition. None of them, excluding Midoriya who passed out and was immediately taken to the infirmary, had any serious injuries. The 2 teachers were in the hospital, but the doctors confirmed they would make a successful recovery. Now, the police were asking down questions to the students to find as much information as possible. "Hey guys, you alright? That attack was something else," Kirishima asked after he was finished. "Yeah, I was at the entrance. That mist guy was pretty good. We were lucky to have Uraka float the guy so Ida had a chance to escape," Sero said while sighing. "Still, manly for you to fight them. I was in the collapsed city zone with Bakugo. You should have seen how many villains he took down. Guy's a natural," Kirishima said while sticking his thumb in the boy's direction. Bakugo just replied with a confident smirk. "Hey, you guys want awesome?" Kaminari suddenly popped in after hearing them. Midoriya was kicking butt back at the mountain zone. "He probably took down the most villains out of the 3 of us. He used those different abilities, like Jiro's sound wave and Sero's tape." Sero grinned at the fact how his quirk was used by his classmate while Kirishima nodded. Kaminari continued his recounting of the event. "Not only that, he also stood up against that huge bird guy." "Really? The one that All Might had to take down?" The 2 boys exclaimed in shock. "Yep, though it was mostly him just dodging its attacks. And it was the one that landed him in the infirmary." Suddenly, Jiro and Yaoyorozu heard their conversation and walked up to them. "Hey, what's this about Midoriya?" Jiro asked. "Oh, Kaminari was just telling us about what Midoriya did during the attack," Sero explained. "Ah, he did help us on more than one occasion. He stopped villains that were trying to sneak up on us," Yaoyorozu said with a small smile. "Yep, and then he also took it upon himself to distract the bird creature long enough so we could escape, even though it nearly killed him," Jiro pointed out. The small group hoped that their classmate would make a safe recovery. Back at the infirmary, Midoriya had just woken up from his short-term coma. Looking around, he quickly noticed Recovery Girl sitting right next to him. Good, you're awake. I've been waiting for a while till now, she said with a smile. As he tried to process what had happened, the memories of the USJ came flooding back. Is everyone okay? He asked worryingly. Recovery girl stared at him for a few seconds before chuckling to herself. Of course you worry more about your friend's safety than your own. Don't worry, none of the other students are injured. Your teachers are in the hospital, but they should be better after a few days. More importantly, you should know how close you were to dying. The amount of injuries you accumulated was like you ran over by a train, she scolded while lightly hitting him over the head with her cane. Rubbing the spot where he was hit, he gave a sheepish smile in response. His entire body was exhausted and he felt like he could sleep for an entire day. After recovery girl finished doing a final checkup on him, he was allowed to get some extra sleep to regain his lost stamina. The sweet embrace of sleep never felt any more satisfying as he drifted off. Chapter 11, Christmas Special. Snowball Fight. As the snow fell gently from the skies, you could find Class 1A engaged in an extreme snowball fight. Being an even split of two teams, snowballs were raining down at dangerous speeds. Of the 20 students, 3 of them were especially motivated. Midoriya was simultaneously throwing and shooting down snowballs with one hand for each task. Bakugo was using small explosions to launch the snowballs at faster speeds without melting them, and Todoroki was more or less a snowball maker that supplied his team with an almost endless supply of ammunition. Bring it on, Deku, Bakugo shouted while winding up to throw. Before he could, he was interrupted by a snowball to the face. The force from said ball was strong enough to knock him over into the ground. Everyone laughed at the sight while also taking 5 steps back in preparation for what was going to happen. As expected, everything in a 5-foot radius around the boy was blown up with a huge explosion. Bastard! I'll kill you for that! He screamed before continuing his assault, with more strength and viciousness. The match went on with huge grins on all of their faces. Christmas tree. That should do it, Kirishima said as she put the final ornament on the tree. The entire class stepped back and took a look at the Christmas that they had just finished. It was tall enough that it nearly touched the ceiling. The entire thing was littered with ornaments and lights that shined the colors of the rainbow. On top of the tree, they had put an All Might ornament of him giving a thumbs up. That idea had obviously been suggested by Midoriya, who was completely red when he asked. Their favorite part of the tree were the custom ornaments of them in their hero costumes. Yaoyorozu offered to make them too as a fun idea when Kaminari said that he would look cool on the tree. Deku, this tree really turned out good, Uraka exclaimed. Yeah, it's nice that we will work on it together. This is the first Christmas we are spending together as a class, Midoriya replied with a smile. So, what should we do next? He turned to face her when he asked the question, but she didn't seem to be paying attention. She was staring at him with focused eyes. Uraka? He asked nervously after a few seconds of it. There was still no response from her. It was really starting to creep him out. You kinda look like a Christmas tree, she suddenly said. Huh? Your hair. It reminds me of the tree, she said while pointing towards said tree. That was definitely a new one. People have usually called him broccoli or bush head, bet never a tree. Did he actually look like a Christmas tree? Unfortunately, some of the other classmates heard their little exchange and decided to join in. You are right, his green hair and red face make him the perfect tree, Kaminari said with a huge grin. Yeah, but we can make him better, Ashido said mischievously while grabbing a spare ornament. Slowly, some of them began to surround Midoriya with evil grins on their faces. Gee guys, what are you doing? Wait, no. He screamed before the students pounced on him. A few minutes later. Aizawa regretted stepping into the common room at the moment. He had heard some screaming and rather slowly walked over to where his students were to go check on them. He honestly expected that one of them angered Bakugo and faced his explosive temper. What he didn't expect was to find almost all the class laughing and taking pictures of Midoriya, who for some reason had ornaments attached to his hair and lights wrapped all around his body. In addition to his beet red face, he was the personification of a Christmas tree. As most of the students laughed at him, the only one that seemed not to was Ida, who was chastising them for forcing him into it. I don't get paid enough was the last thing he said before leaving the room. Mistletoe panic. Ashido was on a mission, a romantic Christmas mission. Get her classmates to kiss each other using mistletoe. While normally she could have just placed them at random places and just hoped for the best, but she wanted to get guaranteed scenarios. To do so, she analyzed her friends for the past week to find out their movement patterns and where they usually talk with someone. From someone's favorite spot on the couch to the exact place where two classmates tend to run into each other each morning. Nothing got past this matchmaker. Going by her notes, She put the mistletoes in positions and waited. The first spot was in the kitchen, right next to the pantry. More often than not, Midoriya and Uraka would run into each other there at noon to grab a quick snack before doing homework. When the two got there, she gave Hagakure the cue to call them out. "Oh! Look who's under the mistletoe?" she squealed while longing at the two. Everyone around stopped and looked at the spot above the two. As she said, the infamous plant was hanging right above their heads. Both Midoriya and Uraka immediately flushed red and started to incoherently stutter. After about a minute of it, Uraka quickly pulled Midoriya in for a kiss and ran away embarrassed. He stood there for a few seconds before promptly falling over and passing out. As the guys tried to shake him awake, Ashido sneaked away to find her next targets. Pair, Kaminari Jiro. This spot was above a specific couch where Jiro would usually sit and Kaminari would always drop in to make a joke. When she called them out, Kaminari looked surprised while Jiro looked red and shocked. What was even more shocking was when Kaminari shrugged his shoulders and gave Jiro a quick peck on the lips. This of course earned him direct sound waves to his head. Pair, Todoroki Yaoyorozu. This spot was actually above Midoriya's room as the two would go over there to study with him and some other people. It went perfectly as they both were under it right before they knocked on the door. She had sent Kirishima to go as her stand-in and record the entire thing. It was probably the most entertaining one since Yaoyorozu was completely flustered while Todoroki looked confused by why they had to kiss. Thankfully, Ashido planned for it and taught Kirishima some manipulative phrases to push them in the right direction. It worked out as Todoroki kissed Yaoyorozu because, "I am too tired to even listen to your explanation." The day went on with some other awesome mistletoe moments that no one could explain how they happened so perfectly. What was better was how all of them were recorded and preserved for future reference. Chapter 12. Before I start this chapter, I must acknowledge something about how this timeline works. I am not quite sure the exact spacing between each event as it isn't really too specific about it. So, just think of it like it is in the actual series unless I specifically put in other events that aren't canonical. When the news about the USJ were made known, everyone was in an uproar. This was the first time that a villain attack on this scale was ever attempted on any school. Parents were completely outraged at the fact how first-year students were almost killed and the media was taking advantage of it by pumping out headlines that were intended to over-exaggerate. Some of the more known titles were Top Hero School Nearly Let Student Die? And UA allowed villains to infiltrate their facility and cause life-threatening injuries to kids. Of course, they were heavily bending the truth. The biggest lie the media made was how all the students were seriously injured when in fact the only one that had them was Midoriya. Even so, he was able to make a full recovery within the span of a single day, thanks to a self-repairing function in his suit combined with Recovery Girl's quirk. In response to the event, UA gave the students 2 days off from school and promised to fortify their security. While it did calm down people, it would take a long time for them to regain the trust it built up. As Midoriya read each new article that had something to do with the USJ, he thought of what he had experienced. Up until this point, he knew the life of a hero was not walk in the park and would cause stress and anxiety. Now, he finally understood what heroes have to face each day. Living on the edge, not knowing what day will be your last, having people to save even though you hardly have the strength to save yourself. Mr. Aizawa was right, nothing is fair when it comes to heroics. It's our job to change and resolve that unfairness, he said to himself while starting to lift a dumbbell in his other hand. For those 2 days, he spent them both thinking and training so he could be better prepared if another happens. When they got back to school, the class was waiting for a teacher to show up. They were catching up on what had happened after the incident. It's hard to believe that we're so well known. We were able to get a few seconds of screen time when the news reporters came, Hagakure said with what everyone assumed a happy expression. Yeah. We're practically celebrities to everyone. Kaminari replied with a cocky smile. But still, we're lucky that the All Might showed up. With all of those villains, who knows what would have happened to us, Sero said with weak chuckle. Mineta started crying while saying to not bring that fact up as it scared him. Bakugo yelled at him to shut up, which was quickly followed. All Might was so cool back there. That bird guy was so strong, none of us could have even hoped to go against it, Sato said while pumping his fist up. They all agreed while a few of the students glanced at Midoriya when the bird villain was mentioned. Soon, the topic shifted to the teachers that were there and they brought up the question about their homeroom teacher. They already knew that Mr. Aizawa was too injured to even teach a class. So they were wondering who would show up for their homeroom. Hey, do you guys think that Mr. Aizawa will be okay? Sue asked. He'll pull through. The doctors already told us that he will be able to recover, so we just have to wait until he's in top condition, Kirishima reassured with a grin. Suddenly, The door slid open and the entire class turned to see who it was. To all of their surprise, it was Aizawa. He had bandages wrapped all around his face and arms so much that he looked like a mummy. "Good morning, class," he said in his usual monotone voice, albeit a bit muffled due to the bandages over his mouth. "Mr. Aizawa? What are you doing here?" All of them shouted in surprise. "I'm doing my job, teaching students. If you take a break just because of simple injuries, then you aren't cut out to be heroes," he replied. Most of them sweat dropped at the fact that he called his injuries simple. He was one hardcore hero. "Anyways, there is another reason why I had to be here. I need to prepare you all, your fight isn't over yet. Please don't let it be more villains," some of them thought worryingly as they waited for what he was about to say. "The UA Sport Festival is coming up," he finished. "Why does he always do this?" They thought in relief while some others were excited. "Hell yeah. I've been waiting for this. This is what separates the boys from the men," Kirishima yelled as he pumped his arm up. Quickly, the rest of the students started to get excited for the important event. That is until Aizawa silenced them using his quirk. "Okay, I assume you know some things about it. Back then, the Olympics were a huge thing for sport competitors. When quirks started showing up, Olympic participation grew smaller and smaller as it became unbalanced. Now, the only competition the world cares about is our school's sports festival. Not only will civilians be watching, but pros all over the country will be seeing your performance. The only difference from the previous years is that it's being held earlier than before," he explained. "But Mr. Aizawa, is it really a smart idea to hold the festival right after the villain attack? It might be targeted again," Jiro asked with an uneasy expression. "From what I heard, the administration is doing it to show that the situation is under control. We are making the security stronger with some pros acting as patrol," he said. The news did make all them feel more at ease than before. Aizawa continued in with his explanation, "Besides, this festival is too important to cancel just by a couple of villains. It's really meant for pros to scout out potential. This is your chance to go big and be noticed." He's right, most students that graduate become sidekicks to pros before they become pros themselves, Kaminari said explained. "But some of them miss their chance to and just stay sidekicks," Jiro said before turning towards him. "Actually, that's probably where you'll be heading. You are pretty dumb." He just sighed in annoyance and tried to ignore the snark insult that was directed at him. "One chance a year, 3 chances in a lifetime. So you all better no slack off with any of your training. Make the most out of it and show them what you're made of." "Class is dismissed," Aizawa finished. From that moment on, all of Class 1A trained themselves to be ready for this competition. Up until the dead of night, they worked out to improve both their skills and quirks. Some of them trained by themselves, like Bakugo and Kirishima. Bakugo practiced by trying to make larger explosions to build a tolerance to the kickback, while Kirishima jumped off buildings to test the durability of his hardening. Some others were Ida, who did long sprints to improve the power of his engines, and Sero, who trained his mobility. Others opted to train with their classmates to develop combos and teamwork skills. Uraka, Ashido, and Aoyama were practicing on floating pieces of debris and using precise shots of acid and laser to destroy them mid-air. As for Midoriya, he did a combination of both. He asked each of his classmates for more insight on their quirks so he could understand more about his copied quirks. The only ones he didn't ask were Bakugo and Todoroki, as they seemed like they wouldn't want anyone to talk to them. For individual training, he continuously used his copied quirks to increase their energy capacity, allowing him to use them longer. Along with an increase in energy, the training also helped discover new things about the quirks. He found out with Jiro's quirk that he could make small jacks and plug them into objects, either to listen for noises or send sound waves into the object to break it apart. Another new feature was how he could bring a second cannon when using Sero's and Bakugo's quirk for more control. With the improvement of his quirks, the Mega Buster was getting stronger as well. The power and speed of each shot were better than they were at the combat trials. The charge time had also decreased by 1 second, so a level 1 shot took 4 seconds of charging and a level 2 shot took 11. There was also a boost in his MP unit that allowed a more focused analysis on objects. Other parts of the training included talking with All Might for advice. He would give guidance on what areas Midoriya should work, which really made the training more effective. During that time, students from the other courses would often crowd around their classroom to scout the competition of the students who survived a villain attack, as quoted by Bakugo. Thanks to his aggressive and rude attitude, all the other students hated him and his entire class, one going as far as to declare war on all of them. Why do we have to drag into this because of him? Midoriya and the rest of the class thought. Even with the looming threat of the other competitors, it didn't hinder their training. After the 2 weeks of preparation, the day of the sports festival has arrived. Many people were walking to the stadium where the main games would be held. Vendors were lined up along the streets to make some money from the viewers. There were even some heroes patrolling the area like Kamui Woods and Mount Lady. Even so, they shared some of the people's enthusiasm for the event. Inside the stadium, the seats were completely packed with people and heroes who were wanting to scout out any potential. The collective cheering was absolutely deafening, with the entire building vibrating from all the sound waves. Even though it was just a normal school event, the hype it was given made it worthy of global status. In one of the waiting rooms, Class 1A were waiting to be called up. Mostly all of them were nervous about competing in front of thousands of people. Others were psyched to show the world what they could do. Midoriya was doing breathing exercises in hopes that it would somewhat calm him down. Okay, this is my chance to show everyone that I can be a hero, he thought with a small smile appearing. To show All Might that his training with him was worthwhile and to fulfill Dr. Light's wish for peace. He needed to prove that all the opportunities given to him were put to good use. Midoriya, a cold voice said to his right. Turning his head, he saw that it was Todoroki that spoke. He had a cold, calculating expression. It's pretty obvious that I'm stronger than you. That took both Midoriya and the rest of the students as a surprise. Only a moment ago, he was isolating himself from all of them, and now he's confronting one of them out of nowhere. Well, you are probably right. Even so, you can use a copied version of my quirk, both ice and fire. That alone makes us enemies, he said with a darker expression. Whoa, chill out, man. No need to attack your classmate like that. Kirishima tried to intervene by placing a hand on Todoroki's shoulder, which was immediately shook off. We aren't here to be friends. This tournament isn't a group effort, it's whoever comes on top, and I intend it to be me using only my ice, he countered before walking off to his spot he was previously at. No one could comprehend what had just happened. Their classmate just made a declaration of war against one of their own, which makes it the second one they heard. This competition was really getting intense before it even started. Breaking the awkward tension that hung in the air, Ida burst in through the door, announcing that it was time to start. The class followed their president through the halls of the stadium until they reached the opening to the main field. Here they come. The class WHO not only shown tremendous promise since school started, but has also survived a villain attack. Give it up. For Class 1A. A extremely loud voice shouted. Stepping out, they were greeted by the sight and sound of thousands of people cheering for them. From above the spectator rows, there was a teacher's area and a commentator's box where they could see Mr. Aizawa and Present Mike. That must have been him who made them introduction. As they walked across the field, Midoriya felt even more nervous now that he was actually there. All the eyes that were in him made him feel like he should be smaller so that they didn't notice him. Is this what popular heroes have to deal with on a daily basis? He suddenly had a greater admiration for All Might for the fact he was able to keep his cool with so many fans. After that, the other 4 courses were introduced in alphabetical order. Once they were all gathered up, the referee walked up onto a stage. All the males in the audience started cheering upon seeing the R-rated hero, Midnight. She was wearing her hero costume, which was way too revealing for a high school sports competition. All the students agreed on that notion, except for Mineta, of course, who was loving it. Hello, welcome to this year's UA Sports Festival. I'm sure we are all excited to see what these students are capable of doing, she started with a seductive voice, making most of the students feel extremely uncomfortable, presenting the opening speech as the freshman representative, Izuku Midoriya. Wait, what? Midoriya shouted once he realized that his name was called. No one had told him he was going to make a speech, not even that he was freshman representative, whatever that means. His classmates urged him to walk forward with some friendly nudges. Hesitantly, he walked up to the stage and faced all the students. Everyone was looking at him with complete focus. Dear Lord. What do I do? I don't have a speech and so many people are watching me. Maybe I should just tell them what I think about this. Midoriya quickly tried formulating a plan that wouldn't embarrass him. Hello, I would like to say that in the name of competition, we should all work our hardest to win, and I wish all of you good luck, he said as confidently as he could. For a few moments, no one had made any sort of reaction. He thought that he messed up and they were about to laugh. Then, he started to hear clapping from the students. Looking up, he saw that most of the students were giving him an applause. Of course, a few of them didn't share that same reaction, but it was nice that he didn't embarrass himself. He quickly stepped down and walked back to his class. Nice job, Deku, Uraka said in a small whisper. Yes, that speech was perfect for the occasion. Sportsmanship and confidence are some great traits to have, Ida remarked. Thanks, I was worried that I messed up somehow, he replied while scratching his head. Before they could continue their conversation, Midnight took back charge and announced the first event. Behind her was a screen that showed signs spinning to indicate a wheel style. After a few seconds, it stopped and the sign read obstacle course. Okay everyone, this event is quite simple. You all will run one lap around the stadium where you will start and exit from that hall, she said while pointing toward said hall. There will be obstacles that you must get through to progress in the race. You can use your quirks in any way as long as there is no foul play. Now with the explanation out of the way, let's start. After she finished, all the students lined up before the starting line and were getting ready to start. Most were preparing to use their quirks to gain an early lead. Others were doing normal stretches to prepare for running. Midoriya was in the former as he transformed into his suit. To his mild surprise, all the students who saw him were both shocked and angry at seeing in his suit. Though there was none from his class as they were used to it, the others didn't have that prior knowledge. What the hell? How come he gets to wear that special suit while we have to use our PE clothes? A guy with silver hair and shark teeth like Kirishima yelled in protest. Midoriya remembered him being in Class 1B, as were most of the other kids in his class who were protesting as well. This matter has been brought to the teacher's attention prior to now. We approved it due to the fact that it was an unavoidable part of his quirk. So no more complaining and focus at the task at hand. Midnight states while cracking her whip to show finality in the argument. The protesting students just grumbled to themselves as they got ready. Thank God that was settled peacefully. It was a good thing that the teachers allowed me to have my suit on, Midoriya thought as he continued his preparations. He ran a quick analysis on the area to see if there was any areas that he could use to his advantage. The only thing he found was that the hall was too narrow to comfortably fit all of them. If he could boost over the rushing students, he would have a head start on them. The best quirk to use was Kachan since he could easily propel himself in the air unlike Ida's. Changing to his explosion form, the other students gave him confused glances while his class looked a bit suspicious with his choice of suit. Okay listeners, are you ready? Go! Present Mike suddenly announced. Immediately, all the students began rushing forward to get the lead first. Present Mike continued his commentary of the event. Our students are off to an amazing start. You can't anticipate who will come in first place. Who do you think we should keep our eyes on, Eraserhead? Aizawa just answered in 2 words, the door. True to his words, all the students were cramped up in the hall that was packed with them trying to run. It was like people at Black Friday who were trying to get the best items first. None of them were able to break from the pack, all except for one. Explosions could be heard from above them and they looked up to see a person in a blue and red suit flying above the rest of them with explosions coming from his hands. That's WHO we should keep our eyes on. While the rest are struggling below, Class 1A's Izuku Midoriya is flying above and beyond. Present Mike shouted into his microphone. The audience started to cheer loudly for the student that had took the lead in an eye-catching way. The students themselves were momentarily surprised by the sight that they didn't notice the sudden drop of temperature. Immediately, all of them were suddenly stuck in place with their feet frozen to the ground. Todoroki quickly ran by with a quiet apology. Quickly, a few of the students were able to get out of the students' ice and resume the race, one of them being Bakugo. Damn it! You aren't getting away, Deku. Icy hot, he shouted as he propelled himself with explosions as well. Midoriya by now has changed back to his normal form and was now running to preserve weapon energy for further obstacles. I won't give up that easily, Kachan, he yelled back with a determined grin. The latter replied with a war cry and more powerful explosions. Quickening his pace, he was able to maintain an okay distance from Todoroki and Bakugo. Ha! You think you guys are hot stuff, don't cha? A voice yelled from behind the 3 of them. Turning around, it turned out to be Mineta who was bouncing off his balls that were being thrown on the ground like trampolines. That ice trap was pathetic. I will show you a real trap move. Slowly, he took off a ball from his head and did a pose, secret move. Grape R. He wasn't able to finish calling out his move name before he was knocked away by a robot arm. Midoriya turned back to the source of the arm and saw it was the 0-pointers. There were a few of them and other robots from the exam. Geez, they think we can take those easily? Midoriya asked himself when thinking about how many robots were at the exam. While he was distracted, Todoroki ran past him to be right in front of them. These things won't stop me from winning, especially with him watching, he whispered to himself as ice began forming on the ground. With a wave of his right arm, he sent a huge wave of ice that froze some of the 0-pointers. Right afterwards, he ran through them without a second glance to the rest. Snapping out of his muttering trance, Midoriya realized that he lost the lead and continued his running. While he was running underneath, he heard Todoroki say something that was hard to catch for normal hearing. I wouldn't do that. I froze them while they were off balance, on purpose. The sound of groaning metal became apparent to everyone right afterwards. True to his warning, the robots started to fall over from the imbalance of weight distribution on the ground. When they hit the ground, they made a huge heap of robot bodies that were broken apart. Midoriya was able to get past the roots before they blocked him and was now running full speed to catch up. He couldn't let Todoroki win that easily, not after the declaration he said in the waiting room. Back to the students behind him, he heard two bursts that sounded like someone had busted through metal. Turning around while still running, he saw it was Kirishima and the silver hair boy who called out in his suit who were sticking out of one of the limbs. Both of their skin looked harder than normal, with Kirishima looking rock-like and the silver boy steel-like. Both of their quirks are the exact same concept as each other, he thought. His observation was confirmed when they seemed frustrated after noticing the other. Still, he had to focus on the race and reclaiming first place. Todoroki was not too far ahead, just enough that it would take a bit for him to catch up. Get ready. For the next obstacle, you all will have to face the gorge. Present Mike suddenly yelled. Looking ahead, Midoriya did see that the ground ahead led to a cliff. The distance from them to the other side was way too large for even someone with a jumping quirk to clear in one leap. How deep the chasm was, it was like a perfect abyss that never seemed to end. In the gorge, large stone platforms were rising from the bottom with tight ropes connecting them to one another. This obstacle seemed so favor aerial and balance quirks over others. Up ahead, Todoroki was sliding on the tight ropes, freezing them as he goes. Okay, I still have a chance to catch up. Gotta fly over this thing entirely, he thought before changing to his explosion form and firing explosions from both of his hands. The technique for flying was to simply detonate the explosives the moment they come out of his hand, a trick he got from Bakugo from the combat trials. The problem was that he had to plan out when to use an explosion so he didn't burn through the energy quickly. The MP unit came in handy as he could plot out his own trajectory. Right now, he was slowly getting closer to Todoroki, who had just cleared the obstacle and was running to the next one. Suddenly, he heard some explosions from right behind him and he instantly knew who it was. Out of my way, Deku, Bakugo yelled as he passed him. He was able to propel himself faster as he didn't have to limit the number of explosions he made. By then, both of them made it over the next obstacle and lowered themselves closer to the ground. Midoriya changed back and began running after the two. Would you look at that? Midoriya has just dropped to third place with Todoroki and Bakugo ahead. Will he be able to reclaim his spot? Either way, all three of them are blowing ahead of the rest. The third obstacle should really change up the game. You all will face the minefield. Why do you have to be so loud? Present Mike shouted again with Aizawa asking in the background. As he said, a wide area in front of them was noticed. There was no distinct objects that were sticking out, just circles in the dirt that were everywhere. By the time Midoriya had reached the area, Todoroki was halfway done with Bakugo gaining on him. Looking at one of the circles, he stepped on one to see how strong they were. The mine exploded a second after contact in a pretty big cloud of pink smoke. The force wasn't strong enough to seriously harm someone, just enough to blow them off their feet. Great, I need to think of a way to get past these to catch up without being blown up. The sensors of the mines take a moment to activate after someone steps on it. That means I have to move fast enough so that I'm not on one for more than a second, Midoriya analyzed as he formulated a plan. Using the explosion form wouldn't help as it wouldn't be fast enough to overtake them. The only form fast enough would be his engine form. Changing into it, he kneeled on the ground in the startup position while his engines were building up. Taking aim, he activated the engines and shot off like a bullet, sliding across the ground in the direction of his two classmates. The mines were detonating behind him, but none were able to get him as he was too fast, making a stream of pink smoke trailing him. Todoroki and Bakugo heard the explosions and turned around to see a blur of white and blue speed past them. Before they could react, the mines that were just touched exploded underneath them. Holy crap! In a huge burst of speed, Midoriya just passed both Todoroki and Bakugo to reclaim his former spot of first place. Your class is something else, Eraserhead. Present Mike yelled. Back to the race, the two boys recovered from the detonations and were trying to chase after Midoriya. It was futile as he was almost near the finish line. Jumping up from his shins, he dug his heels into the ground to slow down his momentum. The efforts led to him passing the finish line and stopping a few yards away from it. The winner of the obstacle race is Izuku Midoriya from Class 1A. The announcement caused all the audience to cheer loudly. Confetti dropped from out of nowhere and covered the green hair boy who had just changed out of his suit. Despite his best attempts not to, tears began streaming down the side of his face. After a couple seconds of that, second and third place finished with frustrated expressions. Damn it, not again. Bakugo looked like he was about to blow a fuse and blow up anything and everything around him. Todoroki had a more controlled anger for losing to him. Both of them looked at Midoriya and made mental vows to beat him in the next competition. Slowly, the rest of the competitors were finishing the race with exhausted looks. Uraka walked up to congratulate Midoriya for his win while Ida looked frustrated for losing in a race. The weirdest one was Yaoyorozu walking and looking utterly exhausted for some reason. The answer revealed itself when she turned around to show them Mineta, who was hanging onto her back using his balls. It took a bit of effort to pry him and his balls off of her, but she looked relieved by it. After that, Midnight called them up to the stage to explain what happens next. That was a very exciting performance there. Unfortunately, only the first 42 people can move on to the next round. While they continue, the rest who didn't make it can still participate in games we set up, she explained while licking her lips. For the next round, let's see what you will be doing. Spinning the wheel, it spun for a few seconds before landing in Cavalry battle. There were some murmuring among the students as some of them didn't know what it was. Let me explain, you all will split into groups of 2 to 4 people. One person will be the rider while the others are the horses. This is just your normal co-op activity, but with one difference. Points were assigned depending on your position in the obstacle race. The combined amount of points your team has will be written on headbands. The main goal is to snag as many points as you can before time runs out, she said while showing a picture of how the formation should look like. So, the amount of points your team has depends on who you team up with? Uraka asked. Exactly, the points begin at 5 for last place and increase by increments of 5. So it would be 5, 10, 15, and so on. The amount of points for first place though is 10 million, she shouted. It was silent for a moment while everyone was processing what was just said. Then, Midoriya began sweating and shaking uncontrollably upon realizing the weight of her words. The rest looked towards him with hungry eyes, resembling that of a predator who do anything to get its quarry. With that amount of points, it would guarantee the team who gets it will move on to the next round after that. It was the perfect chance for anyone to take down the top and claim it for themselves. Such was the intended meaning of this round. Chapter 13. Maybe it wasn't a smart idea to try and get first place, Midoriya thought to himself nervously. After all, doing so placed a huge bounty over his head for the next round. With everyone obviously wanting to take it, he was seriously stressed about how he was going to deal with them chasing him. Now that you know about the next round, you have 15 minutes to make your teams, Midnight said while a timer showed up. Right after it started, everyone began walking around to find a good teammate. Some strolled while others dashed in a hurry to get the best people. He was neither of those categories, just standing around alone. Because of his 10 million points, it would be a risky gamble to join his team. It'd be much safer to steal the headband later on. He tried asking some people to join up with him, but they either discreetly or not discreetly move away from him. Even his own classmates turned him down when he asked. He tried asking Ida as he was his friend, but he politely declined because, I want to prove I can stand up against you. Looking around, he saw that Bakugo had the opposite issue as he was being swarmed by students wanting to team up with him while Todoroki already had a team. Great, how can I compete if I can't make a team? He asked himself sourly. Hey Deku. Want to team up? A voice suddenly asked behind him. Turning around, he saw that it was Uraka. Processing what he heard, he was on the verge of releasing a waterfall of tears. Out of all the darkness, a single dot of light in the form of his friend comes forth. Really? Even with my stupid number of points? Well, yeah. It's best to work with people you're close with, she said with a smile that radiated energy. What did he do deserve such a friend? Wiping his face of upcoming tears, he donned a more confident expression. He had his first teammate and needed more to make a complete team. Looking around, he saw a girl with pink hair and goggles walking. She seemed to be looking for someone particular as she ignored some people who asked her. When her eyes landed on him, she dashed over to him at an incredible speed and got right in front of him. Let me join, person in first place, she yelled. The outburst caught both him and Uraka off guard. Who are you? He asked. The name's Mei Hatsume. Rising star in the support course. I would like to team up with you since everyone will have their eyes on us and it will be the perfect chance to show off my babies to the big companies, she exclaimed with a huge grin. Wait, what do you mean by babies? Uraka asked. However, she was ignored as Hatsume pulled out a case full of inventions and showed them off to Midoriya. There were a huge variety that included stun guns, grenades, grappling hooks, jetpacks, and much more. She also explained how support course students were allowed to use as many inventions as they want as long as they designed it. The two quickly began an animated discussion about robots and technology. Perfect, now we need one more member to complete this team, and I know exactly who it should be, Midoriya said. He quickly walked over to a lone Tokoyami. Tokoyami, will you team up with us? Well, it's a surprise that decided to pick me out of the rest. For that, I accept your invitation, he replied with a smirk. The two then walked back to the girls and discussed strategy. After the recruiting time was up, all the teams went up front to receive their headbands. They got into their formations and spread out across the field. Team Midoriya was laid out so that Midoriya was the rider with Tokoyami being the front runner and the girls in the back. Midoriya had a jetpack strapped to his back while Uraka had air propulsion boots, courtesy of Hastoom. The plan was to avoid all the teams and keep them away with Tokoyami's Dark Shadow and Midoriya for anyone that got past it or had a quirk that made some form of light. Tokoyami told them about how his quirk was affected by light levels. Once they were ready, Present Mike began the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and start, he shouted into his microphone. Immediately, all the other team ran towards Midoriya's. That headband will be ours. The gray hair boy from 1B yelled. I expected this to happen. Time to go. Uraka, Hastoom, watch your heads, Midoriya shouted while pressing a button. The jetpack quickly flared up and flew all of them into the air. His teammates clinged onto his legs desperately to not fall down. The others' teams gawked at the unexpected takeoff. The only team who was able to react to it was Hagakure's, as she had the perfect teammate. Jiro. Now, Hagakure yelled. Jiro quickly extended both of her ear jacks towards the airborne team. They almost reached the headband, but Tokoyami was able to have Dark Shadow knock them away before they got too close. Thanks a lot. Your quirk is perfect for mid-range defense from any direction, Midoriya gushed. Well, you were the one who asked me to join. I should be thanking you for this opportunity, he replied. By then, they were starting to drop through the air towards the ground. Before they did, Uraka activated her propulsion boots and eased the landing to a soft thus rather than a large impact. They continued to run away from any of the teams that chased them. Nice job, Hastoom. Your babies are working perfectly, Midoriya said while changing to his acid form and firing some acid at the ground that was in front of a pursuing team. I know. Aren't they amazing? She replied. Uraka mumbled that she was the one operating them. We won't let them get away. After them, Hagakure yelled as her teammates carried her while looking embarrassed by the fact how she wasn't wearing a shirt at all. One of them, Sato, took a glance at her and noticed something peculiar. Wait a minute, where's the headband? He asked in shock. Hagakure lifted her hand to her head to feel the headband, only to discover that it was really missing. While their team was freaking out, a nearby team was jogging away with a blonde rider spinning the headband around his finger casually. Back to Midoriya, his team was running all over the place to avoid other teams. Many attempts were made to steal their points with quirks, such as the jumble of vines that came rushing at him from behind to a person that ejected out some weird viscous liquid that strangely resembled cement. Each was either dodged or blocked by Dark Shadow. Deku, the other teams are starting to surround us. Uraka suddenly shouted. True to her words, the competitors had formed a ring around them and was going for a pincer attack. Thankfully, they had a solution to it. They quickly turned on the jetpacks and flew into the air where none of the teams could easily reach them. The stalling method of staying in the air for as long as possible was working out for them, but it seems that a certain student was annoyed by it enough. Boom! With a big explosion, a familiar spiky blonde student propelled himself into the air and right towards the airborne team. Midoriya heard the explosions and turned around to see that Bakugo was already next to them. Give me that headband, bastards, he shouted while firing an explosion right at them. Midoriya reacted by changing to his ear jack form and firing a sound wave to counter the attack. The result led to Bakugo and most of the explosion being blown back towards the ground while his team was only hit a little. While none of his teammates were hurt, the sound of something breaking apart became quite distinct. It turns out that what little damage the explosion managed to do was able to destroy one of the propulsion boots. As they landed, it was way more jarring than it was the previous times. No. My baby, Hatsune cried while looking at her broken invention. This isn't good. Without a stable way to land, it's too risky to take to the air again. That means we can only do it as a last resort, Midoriya mumbled with a strained expression. Okay, we have almost reached the halfway mark. Let's check the leaderboard to see who has the top spots. Present Mike yelled. The leaderboard turned on and there was a small pause in the audience as they looked at the positions. Besides Team Midoriya, who was at the top, the second and third place teams were taken up Team Monoma and Tetsu. On the field, Bakugo's headband had just been stolen by Monoma. Ha, I never expected Class A to be so easy to take points from. It's like taking candy from a dumb baby, he said with smug smile. What was that? Get over here so I can kill you, Bakugo roared in anger. That's exactly why you guys are so stupid. You are so caught up in winning and being the best, you never take the time to plan out. We know all of your fancy quirks from the preliminaries, all because we weren't trying to take first in that childish race, he said with a cocky laugh before his team jogged off. That's it. We are going to fucking murder those damn B-listers and show them who's better. Bakugo screamed to his teammates, who quickly began chasing after the team. They were mostly scared by the extreme killing intent that their rider was giving off. With Midoriya, they were jogging at a moderate pace to conserve their stamina. Without their flying, they were forced to resort to running as their only means of escaping. As he looked around for any nearby teams, he saw a hand reaching towards his head from the side. He swatted the hand away and turned around to see who it was. The hand had belonged to a blonde-haired student with gray eyes and an expression that resembled narcissism. He had a grin that made it seem like he knows that he won already. Around his neck were quite a lot of headbands, meaning that he had to be either Testutsu or Monoma based on the leaderboard. Ah, impressive. Unlike the rest of the buffoons in your class, you actually pay attention to what's around you. However, you made the same mistake of revealing what your quirk can do during the race, he said with his grin growing bigger. Midoriya's team was slowly backing away in case he tries to take their headband again. Though it was strange why he was stalling. Now that I made contact with you, you just gave your greatest weapon to me, he explained. Then, he started to tense up like he was trying to activate his quirk. Whatever it may be, it wasn't working as nothing happened. Confusion spread across his face as he tried harder to make something happen. Even his teammates were giving confused looks towards their rider. Damn it. Why isn't it working? I know that I made contact with you, so why won't your suit appear? He yelled in frustration as he gave up. Make my suit appear? Does he mean my mega form? Midoriya thought as he watched the boys' team asking about what just happened. Almost immediately, it clicked on what he had meant. The boy must have some form of copy quirk, and he tried to copy his mega form for his own. There was only one problem: his mega form wasn't an actual quirk. Guys, let's go, he said. His team responded quite quickly by moving away from the team. I may not be able to use your power, but that headband will be get back here, you bastards. Monoma started to say before he was cut off by shouting. Both him and Midoriya turned and saw that Bakugo was flying towards them by himself. One of Monoma's teammates inhaled deeply and breathed out an air shield that blocked the explosive blonde from reaching them. Team Midoriya quickly took that opportunity to run away before he went after them next. After they got a fair distance from them, they slowed down a bit to catch their breath. Whoa, that was close. I don't know what that was talking about, but I didn't want to be there when Bakugo looks ready to kill Uraka, exclaimed with both a sigh of relief and shudder. Midoriya nodded his head with a sheepish expression. By this point of the match, some of the teams lost interest of chasing him and decided to go after small points instead. This meant that they didn't have to worry about being chased down that much. He thought that the rest of the match would go smoothly, but some movement caught his eye from the edge of his peripherals. Guys, look out, he shouted. His teammates quickly dodged and backed away from the team that was gunning towards them. As it turns out, it was Todoroki's team. Consisting of him, Yaoyorozu, Kaminari, and Ida, they all looked ready to take his headband. I had a feeling we would run into them sooner or later, Midoriya thought worryingly. The two teams were standing completely still, staring down each other as they waited for their next move. Ida, forward. Todoroki finally broke the tension with the command. Ida then began to run towards them at a quick pace while pushing out thrust from his engines. Both Yaoyorozu and Kaminari were wearing roller skates, allowing them to use Ida's quirk without anything holding it back. We need to move, Midoriya shouted once he saw them go towards them. He tried to use the jetpack, but it malfunctioned and broke down. With no other choice, Uraka used the remaining boot to propel them backwards away from the approaching team. However, it wasn't fast enough as Todoroki was slowly gaining on them. Yaoyorozu, be ready to defend us. Kaminari, prepare to attack. On those commands, Yaoyorozu made a rod that gutted out of her arm and plunged into the ground while making a large blanket from her torso. Once the blanket was finished, Todoroki quickly wrapped it around his team. Midoriya recognized the blanket as the same one that she used during the USJ. With Kaminari there, that could only mean Tokoyami, they're about to send a huge discharge of electricity, he shouted. Tokoyami quickly sent Dark Shadow in front of them just as Kaminari used his quirk. The attack spread everywhere and hit all the teams that were nearby, except their own. Dark Shadow was able to take the brunt of the attack and prevent it from reaching them. Once it stopped, Todoroki took the rod and froze it completely. Using it, he sent a wave of ice that trapped all the teams that were behind him. Grabbing some of headbands from the immobile teams, he finished his work by making large barriers that cut off any means of escape for Midoriya. That one was way too close. Thanks a bunch, Uraka said. This isn't the time for a thank you. We need to make sure they don't get our headband, Tokoyami said while sending Dark Shadow to attack the Todoroki. Before it reached them, Yaoyorozu made a large stone plate that intercepted the attack. She grinned as she watched it go back towards their team. This isn't good. One of them has some form of trick that gives them a certain advantage over us. Looks like Todoroki really did pick a team that was meant to beat ours, Midoriya mumbled to himself. Ida's speed made it impossible to outrun them for long. The combo of Yaoyorozu and Kaminari are able to keep Dark Shadow out of their way while also protecting themselves. Along with Todoroki's ice and fire, there was almost no way to counter them. Wait, fire? His left side. Guys, make sure you keep to their left side. It may be our best chance to keep our spot. His team nodded and began pacing towards the right. Anytime Todoroki's team turned to face them straight on, Midoriya's would scoot to the left even more. It continued on for a bit until they have looped in a circle a few times. Damn it. He's intentionally making sure he's on my left side. I can't use my ice or else I'll hit Ida, Todoroki thought in frustration. The only way to hit them now was to use his fire, which he vowed never to use ever again. Because of that, it may cost them the match. As he was trying to make a plan, Ida decided to speak up. Guys, there is hardly any time left. What I'm going to do will make me unable to do anything later on. I was hoping that I would save it for a fight, but this situation calls for its reveal, he said. What are you planning to do? Todoroki asked curiously. Ida looked even more serious than he normally did in class, which meant something big was going to happen. You'll see, just be sure to grab that headband with that. The engines on his calves began to heat up and blue fire shot out of the exhaust pipes, torque over. Recipro burst. With extreme thrust, the team rocketed forward at unmeasurable speeds towards the other team. Kaminari's face smushed back as if he was taking off in a rocket ship. Todoroki was hardly able to react quick enough to grab at the spot where Midoriya's head should be and grip it tightly. The speeding group continued past the team and took a small turn before slowing to a quick stop. Everyone was staring with shocked expressions at the team who had just crossed a big distance in a blink of an eye. Uraka, Hatsume, and Tokoyami were looking towards them with expressions of shock and disbelief. Team Todoroki was gaping at their teammates' insane new move. This was the first time he has ever shown this technique of his quirk. If you three are wondering, that was the result of putting my engines into overdrive. It gives me explosive speeds, but it causes the engines to stall for a while, Ida explained before looking towards Midoriya, whose head for some reason was bent back. I told you, Midoriya, that I would do my best to beat you. The crowd started to cheer for the sudden turnaround and the amazing feat that was just performed. Whoa! I did not see that coming. Where was this speed back in the race? Whatever the reason, it was because of that team Todoroki was able to take the 10 million points. Present Mike screamed enthusiastically. While he was doing that, Aizawa was also watching and had noticed something that none of the others have. Midoriya was still in a daze at what had just happened. The speed at which they were going, he didn't even see them run past them. There was no time to react nor any indication on what Ida was about to do. So this was what he meant by wanting to stand up against him. He'd be happy for him showing everyone what he was capable of, but now his team was at risk of not moving on. Damn it. We need to get back those points. After how hard Uraka, Tokoyami, and Hatsume worked to get to where they are right now, I can't let those efforts go to waste, Midoriya thought with determination. He was going to show that he can support his friends, the same way they supported him. Guys, we're going to get back our headband. But we can't get in close. Kaminari can keep Dark Shadow away and Yaoyorozu can object to defend themselves, Tokoyami shouted with a frown. He was right, neither Dark Shadow or his team can get close enough to grab the headband. They needed a way to quickly steal back their points while also being able to avoid any countermeasures thrown at them. As Midoriya tried to think of possible solutions, he remembered something that had just happened before facing off with Team Todoroki. Get back here, you bastards. Don't worry, I have a plan. All I need is for you guys to trust me on what I'm about to do, Midoriya explained. His team looked at him for a moment with expressions of confusion and doubt, but they quickly changed to that of trusting and confidence. You go for it, Deku. You have my full support. Go get him. The three encouraged with grins on their faces. Midoriya smiled at their reactions and almost cried to them, but he held them and put on his known determination face. Okay. Let's get back out 10 million, he shouted before changing into his explosion form. Before they could ask what it was for, he stuck his arms back and set off 2 explosions to boost himself off his team and even more to launch towards Todoroki. Holy crap! Midoriya has just separated from his team and began pursuing Team Todoroki to reclaim the top spot. First Bakugo does it, then him? What is up with the kids in your class being so bold, Eraserhead? Present Mike yelled in shock. Even Aizawa had a look of mild surprise. The entire crowd was starting to go wild as the action was getting more intense. What? Kaminari yelled when he heard that while he and his entire team turned to see that Midoriya was indeed flying towards. It was like seeing Bakugo flying towards them with a face that didn't say he wanted to blow up someone. Don't think I'll give up that easily. Yaoyorozu, Todoroki shouted. She quickly made a stone plate that blocked Midoriya's grab for the headband, like when she did the same thing with Dark Shadow. Midoriya grunted as his hand had grabbed the thing he didn't need. Now, Kaminari, Todoroki shouted while covering his team in the insulation blanket. Kaminari then began sparking with electricity surrounding him. Before he could discharge, Midoriya quickly changed to his engine form and used the stone plate as a launch pad to boost himself onto the air. The electricity came a moment later, harmlessly shocking the ground around them. Back with Midoriya, he had changed back to his explosion form and launched himself back towards the team to make another attempt. Don't think that same trick will work again, Yaoyorozu shouted as she made another stone plate to block him. Before he could run into the object, a shadowy hand grabbed it and broke it clean off. She glanced over to see that it was Tokoyami who had did it. Unfortunately, that distraction was long enough for Midoriya to get in close enough. Midoriya quickly scanned the headbands as they weren't showing their point values and found that the 10 million was in the middle. Thrusting his hand out, he made a grab for the headband. Todoroki reacted by bringing up his left arm in an effort to block it. He was trying to make Midoriya grab his arm instead so he could force it away and possibly have Kaminari fire off another discharge. Instead, his arm suddenly had flames erupting out of it and covering it entirely. Both of them noticed the flames and were surprised. What am I doing? Todoroki thought in utter surprise. Crap. Need to dodge them, quick, Midoriya thought urgently. The end result was Todoroki taking his focus off Midoriya to turn off his fire while Midoriya used the arm facing away from the team to blast himself over them. When he got around them, he swiped the 10 million points, changed to his engine form and shot off straight into the air. What just happened? Kaminari blinked as everything was going too fast for him to fully process it. Ida and Yaoyorozu shared similar expressions while looking at Todoroki for answers. However, they immediately noticed something different about their rider. Todoroki, one of our headbands is gone, Ida shouted in surprise. Todoroki simply just turned up and flared at the airborne Midoriya who was gripping the 10 million point headband. I do not believe it. In an epic turnaround, Midoriya himself was able to take back the 10 million points and reclaim his team's spot in first place. And just on the nick of time as time is up. That concludes the second round of the sport festival, folks. Now let's see the final scores. Present Mike shouted as a buzzer went off. The teams then got out of formation in Midoriya's case, landing, and were doing some pep talk before it shows who was moving on. A majority of the teams there looked disappointed as they either no points or hardly any points. A few of the teams looked confident of their number of points they got from stealing. In first place, we have Team Midoriya. WHO's rider pulled a sick comeback to get back their pwn. Team Midoriya quickly took turns giving high fives to Midoriya. In second place, we have Team Todoroki. WHO took everyone by surprise with their speed. Everyone except Midoriya, of course. Kaminari grumbled for that last comment while Ida and Yaoyorozu were discussing how they could have done better. Todoroki was just staring at either his left hand or Midoriya. In third place, we have Team Bakugo. WHO also managed to pull off an epic comeback when their points were stolen. Bakugo simply responded by screeching bloody murder in extreme anger, as he didn't get the indisputable win that he was aiming for. Some of the nearby people looked very disturbed by it. And in fourth place we have Team Test Wait, Team Shinso? Where did they come from? The purple-haired kid was walking away from his team, who looked like they had just snapped out of a trance. These four teams will move on to the next round, a one-on-one fighting competition. We will now take a quick intermission for the students to get ready and for us to set up the stage. Present Mike said before turning off the microphone. The students then started walking to the cafeteria to get something to eat. As they walked, some of Class 1A were talking about the cavalry battle. Geez, Ida. I never knew you could go that face. Why didn't you tell us? Uraka asked with a pout. It was never my intention to deceive you, it is just that I wanted no one to expect it. It was supposed to be my ultimate trump card, but I was still outdone by Midoriya, he said while doing erratic chopping gestures. Yeah. I'm still having a hard time believing that you can go super fast. Though Midoriya did do an epic clutch move at the end, Kaminari said with a sigh. Speaking of which, where is Midoriya? I haven't seen him nor Todoroki since when we were on the field, Yaoyorozu pointed out while looking around for the two. The other three shrugged their shoulders and assumed that they would meet up with them later on. While that was happening, the two aforementioned students were currently starting down each other in a secluded hall. Todoroki had a level expression with hints of frustration and regret, while Midoriya was trying to not look extremely nervous. The two stood in silence for a few minutes before one of them talked. So, what did you call me here for? We should go to the cafeteria, our classmates are probably wondering where we went, Midoriya said in an effort to break the tension. I broke my promise, Todoroki suddenly said. Huh? During the cavalry battle, I was so frustrated at losing to you that I broke the promise I made to myself years ago. I didn't even realize what I was doing before it was too late, he said while looking at his left hand. After a few seconds, Midoriya understood what he was talking about. It's your left side, your fire, isn't it? He asked. It was met with silence. By then, the mood had gotten more tense and awkward, and he wished that he was anywhere else at the moment. You may not know this, but my father is the number 2 hero, Endeavor. He's ambitious and self-centered. His one true goal is to surpass All Might and claim his spot. However, he soon found it was impossible to accomplish that goal himself. So he decided that if he isn't a strong enough hero, he'll make one that is. I assume you know about quirk marriages? Todoroki asked. Well, yeah. Though, what does that have to do with? Oh God, Midoriya's eyes widened as he pieces together what he had meant. No, you understand. That bastard bought my mother from her relatives for her quirk and kept trying to breed the perfect match. Once I was made, he trained me to be his tool in surpassing All Might. Because of that, I was completely isolated from my family. Hardly ever talked to my siblings, and even my own mother drew the line with my resemblance to him by pouring boiling water on my face, he explained while his hand instinctively raised to touch his scar. Oh my God. I had a feeling he's some form of unpleasant childhood that made him so cold and harsh, but this is just messed up, Midoriya thought while trying to hero his face from showing how horrified he actually was. So, I made a promise. To never use my left side, my father's quirk. I will only use my ice, to show him that I reject him with my very being. Since you made me break my promise, I will show no mercy when I defeat you in the next round. After that, Todoroki walked out of the hallway. Midoriya just stood there staring at the back of his classmate. It was amazing that he's gone through that and still have the will to fight instead of giving up. To choose your own path instead of the one that others want you go. His motivations were in many ways strong and understandable. However, I can't just let him win without a fight. No matter what he's gone through, everyone here is giving it their all. I'll just have to show him the results of my motivations as well, he thought with determination while walking towards the cafeteria to join up with his next classmates. Chapter 14. After Midoriya found a seat with his friends in the cafeteria, he began loading up on energy drinks. The last 2 rounds had really taken up a lot of weapon energy, especially for the explosion and engine forms. He needed to be in optimal condition to fight in the one-on-one. As a precaution, he decided to take a few of the drinks so he could drink them between each fight. I have to be at my best if I want to face off against Todoroki, he thought to himself. After hearing his story, he knew that he would come at him with unrelenting force and aggression. Hopefully, he doesn't have to fight him in the first set. Soon, their break was over and they were called back into the arena. As the students walked back into the arena, the crowd began to cheer in anticipation. Looks like our students are back and ready to face the next challenge head on. Each one of them are looking ready to wait. What's this? Present Mike yelled as he noticed something that stood out like a sore thumb. Aizawa saw it as well and face-palmed in disappointment. All the students had their heads turned while trying to understand what was happening. Lined up side to side were all the girls in Class 1A wearing cheerleading outfits and expressions that said, "Please end me." What's up with the outfits? Midoriya asked while trying not to stutter in embarrassment. Mineta. Kaminari. Those perverts tricked us, Yaoyorozu yelled while throwing down the pom-pom she was holding. As it turned out, he had tricked them into wearing it by telling them that Aizawa told them to wear it. The girl sank dejectedly to her knees and cried in frustration. Jiro also followed suit while also covering her chest subconsciously. Uraka and Hagakure tried to cheer them up to little avail. Come on guys, it's not all too bad. At least we can have some fun and calm our nerves down, Hagakure said while waving her pom-poms around eccentrically. Most of the girls just stared at her, dumbfounded how she's happy about wearing that. The female students just have them sympathetic looks while the guys, excluding Kaminari and Mineta, looked in the other direction to be decent. After all that was done, Midnight walked onto the stage with a box that says lots. Okay, now we will draw lots to see the matchups for the set and then some time to strategize while the others join in recreational games we have in place, she shouted. Before she could put her hand in the box to draw names, a hand went up from the crowd. They turned to see that it was Ojiro. He was looking at the ground with a guilty face that was impossible to miss. Hey man, what's up? Kirishima asked in concern. Ojiro stood silent for a moment before speaking. I would like to drop out of the tournament. His request was met by shocked faces from everyone. He was giving up a huge opportunity that could further his hero career. Why? Ojiro, what are you doing? Why do you want to drop out? Midoriya asked in shock. Yes, this is your chance to get scouted by hero agencies. Ida added. No, you guys don't understand. I don't remember a thing about the cavalry battle except for the end. It may have something to do with the guy whose team I was on. While everyone gave it their all, I was just some puppet who didn't earn this spot by himself, he explained with lots of emotion backing up his tone. I also would like to drop out. They all turned to see the new voice, who was a short silver hair kid that might have been from class 1B. I didn't get earn my place here through my efforts. Despite my power, wouldn't it going against what this festival is about if I were to move on? No one was able to say a thing about what just happened. They would rather uphold the meaning of competition rather than their standing. It must have taken a lot of courage to be able to give up something like that for a moral code. Now, what happens next will be decided by Midnight as she's the referee. Boys, what you are doing is turning me on. Ojiro. Shida. You both are now withdrawn from the competition, she shouted with a seductive grin on her face. She did not just say that out loud, all the students thought in shock when she said it turned her own. Then, two people from the losing teams named Tetsu and Shiozaki were chosen to take their places. After that, the screen turned on to show them what the brackets were and when each pair will go. Kirishima vs Tetsu. Hatsume vs Ida. Bakugo vs Kaminari. Sero vs Tokoyami. Todoroki vs Yaoyorozu. Ashido vs Shinso. Aoyama vs Shiozaki. Midoriya vs Uraka. I'm fighting Uraka? Midoriya thought in surprise as he turned to his friend to see that she had the same expression. Some of the other competitors were also looking around for the person they were going up against. Some reactions were good, like Kirishima and Tetsu wishing each other a good match, while some were not good, like Bakugo yelling at a scared Kaminari that he was going to be obliterated when they fight. Everyone was pretty psyched to see how far they could go and if they might win the tournament. After that, the recreational games began for all the students. Some of the 16 students participated in them to help distract them and calm their nerves. Most of the others went by themselves to strategize and focus. Midoriya had chosen to the latter option as he began formulating attack plans. Okay, first thing I need to worry about is Uraka. With her quirk, all she needs to do is touch me once and shove me out of bounds to win, he said while scribbling notes in his notebook. I should focus on using long-range attacks to attack from a distance. Quirks like Jiro's and Kaminari's should be good. Though, what do I do if she manages to touch me? Maybe I can use Sero's to take me down or Kachan's so I can move in mid-air. For the next few minutes, he wrote down anything he could on every student in the one-on-one battle. He already knew a majority of the quirks of the 15 students and could somewhat figure out what they can do with them. The biggest opponents he would face were obviously Todoroki and Bakugo. They had the power to take him down in moments if he wasn't careful. The only way to beat them was to make sure every move is as efficient as possible, to take them down with extreme force to match theirs. After the games were finished, the students were called up to designated areas on the bleachers. They were separated by class, so Class 1A had their own area. When they met up there, 18 of them were there with the exception of Kirishima, who gone down for his match, and Todoroki, who was nowhere to be seen. Midoriya walked over and took a seat next to Uraka and Ida. Aw man. I'm so pumped up for this. How do you think Kirishima is going to do? Uraka asked with lots of enthusiasm. I can't say for sure, since they both have extremely similar quirks, he responded. Really? How did you know? Well, I saw the silver hair guy burst from the fallen robots that Todoroki caused with his skin looking like metal. I see, then this match is going to be decided on skill rather than quirk matchup then, Ida exclaimed. Hello everyone and welcome to the one-on-one tournament of the sports festival. The loud voice of Present Mike brought their attention back towards the fight area. Now, let's introduce the fighters for this match. From Class 1A, with a strong sense of courage and a manly spirit, we have Eijiro Kirishima. As he shouted that, Kirishima walked onto the stage with his arm raised and a huge grin on his face. And from Class 1B, also with a strong sense of courage and a manly spirit, we have Tetsu. Tetsu then walked on stage with a very strange smile after hearing the announcement. As the two stood on opposite ends facing each other, Midnight stepped up to start the fight. Before we begin, here are the rules. To win your match, your opponent must either be incapacitated, unable to move, or stepped out of the boundary lines. Should the fight get out of hand, we will intervene and stop the match. So without further ado, let the match begin. She shouted before stepping away. Immediately, the two boys activated their quirks and charged at each other. When they reached each other, they both threw a punch towards their opponent. It ended up with their fists colliding and a stalemate of force. They took a few steps back and charged again. Whoa, they both seemed to have the same amount of strength, Yaoyorozu commented as the two boys kept throwing punches at each other. I know, it's like Kirishima's fighting another version of himself. What are the odds? Kaminari said with a chuckle. Most of the others agreed with his observations and tossed in their own opinions as well. How do you think Kirishima is going to win this? Even though he can only make his punches harder and defenses stronger, his opponent can do the exact same thing. It's almost like a deadlock, Sero said. Fucking shitty hair, better not lose to that fucking extra, Bakugo grumbled. As the fight continued on, there seemed to be no leverage for any of them. Every time Kirishima would land a punch on Tetsu, he would return a punch back. The fight went on until they both punched each other in the face and knocked each other out. Midnight walked over to the unconscious boys and checked them to see if one of them would get back up. After a few seconds, she raised her whip to get the attention of the crowd. Both Kirishima and Tetsu are knocked out, which means this match is a draw. We will have a tiebreaker match after the rounds are finished to decide who moves on. She announced. Some robots came into the field and carried the boys on stretchers to the nurse's office. That was an interesting fight, Midoriya offhandedly commented. Well, I am up next. I sincerely hope you all wish me good fortune, Ida said while standing up to go to the field. Yeah, you show her what you got, Ida, Uraka yelled in encouragement. Midoriya was about to wish him good luck as well when he noticed that Ida had something attached to his body. Ida, what's that you're wearing? He asked while pointing to the strap-on contraption. Oh, this? Hatsume asked me a favor before I joined you all up here. She stated that she wanted to give me gear that is supposed to assist my movements and improve my fighting style, saying how she wants a fair fight, he explained. Are you sure that she wasn't setting you up to lose? Of course not. Such actions would be incredibly shameful for a UA student. Now then, I must be off, he declared as he speedily walked off. Somehow, Midoriya knew that this wasn't going to end up well. Wait, crap. If he got them right before going up here, that means he didn't tell the teachers about it yet. Now for the second match of the tournament. Present, Mike yelled when the two students were on the platform. From Class 1A, their class president who is all about speed and discipline, we have Tenya Ida. Ida simply had a straight face that showed he was serious. And from the support course, the brainiac who is armed with many support items, we have Mei Hatsume. Hatsume had a huge grin on her face that showed she was excited. Before they could start, Midnight immediately pointed out something. Ida, you do realize that it is against the rules for non-support course students to have support gear without notifying us first. Excuse me, but Aoyama has his belt, so I thought it would be fine, Ida exclaimed in shock. No, he put in a petition. Even your classmate Midoriya turned in one for his suit as a precaution, she argued back. Ida then looked towards Midoriya with an accusing look, who had a sheepish expression on. I must apologize, it's just that Hatsume showed amazing sportsmanship. She wanted a fair fight since she had so much equipment to use. I couldn't help but honor her passion, Ida pleaded while bowing. That instantly done Midnight in as she immediately allowed it. I still question whether she was the best person to be our referee, Midoriya muttered to himself. If she allowed a rule break just because of a story, who knows what else she might do. As he looked at both of the students, he noticed that Hatsume had a sly grin on her face. She's definitely planning something bad with that favor she asked, he thought. Now, let the second match begin, Midnight shouted. Quickly, Ida began to run towards Hatsume, while she was just standing still doing nothing. When he got close was when she made her first move. Don't you feel that acceleration, Ida? She asked. Wait, what? Everyone thought in confusion. Those leg parts are meant to help make your movements fluid and fast. She explained with a huge grin. Then, right when he was about to collide into her, she suddenly moved to the side via an extended rod of metal that jutted out of a contraption on her waist. However, I can easily dodge you with these special hydraulics. Ida wasn't able to stop himself in time and tripped over the metal. Before he could hit the ground, the wings on his back adjusted small air thrusters that helped balance him back on 2 feet. Thankfully, the auto balancer can adjust a person to their natural upright position. They can stop the user from tripping unless they want to. Is she advertising? Midoriya asked with a skeptical expression. That explains why she wanted to give him those items. Not for an even fight, but as a subject to help market. Looks like his predictions about were kinda correct. This continued on as Hatsune kept pulling out more and more inventions that either helped her out or make Ida look more like a fool. They varied from magnetic boots that boosted her into the air to a gun that fired out a net to trap Ida. He kept getting more and more frustrated as he realized that he was lied to and used for someone's personal gain. After 10 minutes, she had seemed to have run out of things to advertise as she stepped out of bounds. Hatsune has stepped out of bounds, which means Ida will move on to the next round. Midnight announced with a little uncertainty. I cannot believe that you used me, Ida exclaimed in anger as Hatsune was walking off to the field. Yeah, sorry about that, she replied in a half-hearted way. The entire crowd was unsure whether they should cheer for the match or just stayed confused. Some of them gave small cheers of encouragement while others just felt disappointed at the boring match. Midoriya was somewhat in the middle as he just felt bad for Ida. To be turned into a laughing stock on live TV has to be harsh. A few minutes later, Ida came back dejectedly to sit down. Hey, don't worry Ida. At least you can move on to show people that you aren't someone to laugh at, Uraka said in hopes of cheering him up. Unfortunately, Ida just muttered how he brought shame to the Ida family name. A few of their classmates chuckled at how different their class president seemed just because of what happened. After they settled down, they noticed that Kaminari and Bakugo were walking up to the platform. Kaminari had a huge grin like he was confident that he would win, though you could tell that he was scared by how forced the grin was and how much he was shaking. Bakugo just had a scowl like there was no point in having a match. Now for the third match. From Class 1A, his temper is as explosive as his quirk is. We have Katsuki Bakugo. Bakugo just grunted in response. Also from Class 1A, with his quirk that is sure to give you a shock, we have Denki Kaminari. Kaminari raised his arms in a show of cockiness that made the crowd cheer a little louder. You go, Bakubro, Kirishima shouted while fist pumping. So, who do you think is going to win this one? Sero asked. Bakugo/Kachan. Both Jiro and Midoriya answered at the exact same time. They both turned to look at each other for a moment and then turned back to face forward. Geez, no faith in Kaminari, Ashido muttered to herself in shock. When the two students were standing in their spots, Midnight made the announcement. Now, let the third match begin, she shouted before stepping. So, ready to be shocked right out of your mind? Kaminari asked with smirk. I'll kill you before you can even hurt me, Pikachu, Bakugo shouted while raising his hands, letting up a few bursts for intimidation. Okay then, I hope you're ready, Kaminari shouted while electricity began dancing around his body. Indiscriminate shot, 1.3 million volts. With that, a huge discharge was released that spread around the entire field. It moved at a fast speed towards the now smirking Bakugo. Right before it could make contact with him, he fired two large explosions towards the ground that boosted him into the air. It was high enough so that none of the arcs of electricity could even reach him. After about 3 seconds, the attack quickly died down as Bakugo landed back on the ground. Everyone was looking at him in mild surprise that he was able to dodge it quite easily. When they turned to see how his opponent will react, they were even more surprised. Kaminari was just standing there with a dumb expression while doing thumbs up. He looked as though he completely zoned out with reality. Other than that, he made no other moves to attack. Bakugo started to walk up to the boy with his usual scowl on his face. When he reached him, he grabbed his PE uniform with both hands and threw him out of bounds. What the hell? Did he have to throw him? Sero yelled in shock. Wow, Kachan is showing mercy? Midoriya said in surprise. Normally, he would have just blown him out of bounds with explosions. You call that mercy? His class yelled in even more shock. Apparently, Bakugo throwing someone is mercy for him. Kaminari is out of bounds. Bakugo moves on to the next round. Midnight announced. When the two boys got back, the two different moods were quite obvious. Bakugo had an indifferent look while Kaminari had his hand covering his face to not show his expression. Hey Kachan, what made you throw Kaminari out instead of using your quirk? Midoriya asked while keeping a safe distance away. Simple, he wasn't worth using my quirk on. Seriously? How the heck does that make sense? Kaminari asked in shock. He's not wrong, you had one shot to hit him and that failed. You even weren't able to do anything afterward with just standing there like an idiot, Jiro remarked while covering a smirk. Kaminari groaned as he slumped into his chair. That just caused Jiro and a few other classmates to start laughing at him. Guys, don't be too hard on him. He was fighting against Kachan after all, who is pretty strong, Midoriya said to defend him. The first response he heard was damn straight. From Bakugo. They wanted to continue teasing Kaminari, but the next match was starting. Now for the fourth match. From Class 1A, he's the actual embodiment of the night, we have Fumikage Tokoyami. Tokoyami just gave a small nod in response, and also from Class 1A, the tape slinger with the everlasting grin on his face, we have Hanta Sero. Sero's grin went even bigger as he stretched his arms in preparation. Now, let the fourth match begin. Hey Tokoyami. Sorry, but I'm going to make this a quick match, Sero shouted before firing tape from both of his elbows. They were rushing at Tokoyami at a fast speed that it would be very difficult to dodge. But of course, he didn't need to. Right before the tape wrapped around him, Dark Shadow appeared and grabbed each strand with one hand. You are going to have to try harder to defeat me, Tokoyami stated. He then commanded Dark Shadow to pull Sero in. It followed the order and yanked the tape towards them. Had Sero not detached the tape in time, he would pull forward towards them. Then he started to run in zigzags around the stage to find a chance to attack again. Eyes trained on him, Tokoyami kept Dark Shadow close to him to be able to defend against the tape should it get too close. Sero kept shooting tape at his classmate and every time, they would either be blocked or narrowly dodged. This pattern of attacking and dodging went on for a bit with no change. Then, the pattern was broken by an impatient Tokoyami. He decided to have Dark Shadow directly attack Sero to end the match. However, when he sent it towards him, Sero had tried firing tape at him at the same time. The result was that the two attacks went past each other and landed. Tokoyami had his torso wrapped in tape and Sero was rammed headfirst by Dark Shadow. The impact knocked Sero out of bounds and made Tokoyami fall over as the tape pulled him down to the floor. Sero is out of bounds. That means Tokoyami moves on to the next round. Midnight announced. Dark Shadow, can you untie me? Tokoyami asked after struggling to get out of his makeshift restraining jacket. It quickly came back and started pulling off the tape while muttering about how thankful he should be. It took a few seconds for the tape to come loose, but it eventually did came off. When the two got back to their class, they were encouraging them how good the fight was. Nice job, Tokoyami Shoji said from one of his hand mouths. He received a silent nod in response. Don't worry too much about it, Sero. It was a super close fight, Ashido said to cheer him up. It seemed to have done the trick as Sero was back to his usual self, making a joke about how she shouldn't lose her match when it comes. Folks. We have now reached the halfway point in the first round. Let's get pumped up. Now for the fifth match. Present Mike shouted while Aizawa was banging his head in the desk in an attempt to drown out his colleague's voice. From Class 1A, we have a prodigy student that came on recommendation and showed that he deserved IT, we have Shoto Todoroki. Todoroki seemed to have an angry look that was just cold and fierce. Also from Class 1A, she also came in on recommendation and has shown impressive talent in the cavalry battle, we have Momo Yaoyorozu. Yaoyorozu walked up with an almost professional expression. Go get M, Yamomo, Hagakure shouted enthusiastically from the stands. Jiro joined in as well with more quiet cheering and encouragement. Now, let the fifth match begin. Yaoyorozu quickly made the first move by making a big riot shield that was large enough so that she could completely hide behind it. She also made metal bat that she gripped in her right hand. Here I come, Todoroki, she yelled before charging straight towards him. For some reason, he hadn't made a move yet. He seemed to be brooding over something and he was prioritizing it more than the fight itself. As she got closer, there was no change in his stationary position. When she got in front of him, she raised her bat to land a strike in him. Before it landed, he looked up and had a crazed look in his eyes for just a moment. It was so quick that almost no one could spot. Only the most observant of the audience could have picked that up. A moment later, another thing happened in just an instant. However, this time, everyone had definitely noticed it. Every one person in the crowd had shocked expressions as they tried to process what just happened and how it was possible. Right in front of their eyes was a massive formation of ice that was half the size of the stadium itself. It's so huge that the top of it peeked over the edge so that people outside of the stadium could see as well. For the Class 1A, the mini iceberg was only a foot away from their faces. Mineta even passed out from just the shock alone of seeing it. Back down towards the stage, Todoroki was just standing in the same place from when the match started, breathing out visible cold air. Yaoyorozu was almost completely covered in ice, with her face being the only thing left free. Her shield and bat laid shattered and forgotten within the ice, like prehistoric trapped in time. Why Yaoyorozu, see can you move? Midnight asked while heavily shivering as half her body had a layer of frost on it. No, she answered after she found that she couldn't move an inch. Then, Yaoyorozu is incapacitated. Todoroki moves on. She announced. Todoroki then walked up to the ice and placed his left hand on it. It soon began to slowly melt as steam rose from the spot where he made contact. All the while having a bit of a remorseful expression. Sorry, he quietly said so that only she could hear. It took almost 30 minutes for the ice to completely melt and they were able to use the field again. Yaoyorozu was the only one to come back to where her class was and she had a blanket wrapped around her body. Hey, you okay? Jiro asked when she sat down next to her. Yeah, she said with a sad expression. It was obvious that the match had really put a huge dent in her confidence. She wasn't even able to do anything against that huge attack. The girls tried comforting her to the best of their abilities, the only one not doing so was Ashido as she had to leave for her match. Now for the 6th match. From Class 1A, she is all about having fun and moving around, we have Mina Ashido. Ashido was throwing peace signs to the crowd with a huge grin on her face that could match Sero's, and from general studies, he has been able to perform as well as the hero course students at this festival. We have Hitoshi Shinso. The purple-haired boy that was now identified as Shinso had a small smirk on his face after he heard his announcement. I hope she remembers my advice, Ojiro quietly said to himself. Midoriya had heard him and looked over. Ojiro, what do you mean by that? I meant that she shouldn't respond to him if he talks. If she does, it will cost her the match. Cost her the match? What happens when you answer him? I'm not 100% sure, but I think that guy has a brainwashing quirk. If you answer him, you become under his control, he explained with a grim expression. Midoriya's eyes widened as he recalled what Ojiro said when he dropped out. I don't remember a thing about the cavalry battle except for the end, so that was what he meant. Now, let the 6th match being. So, that monkey boy that dropped out of the competition, he's in your class? Shinso asked out of nowhere. Ashido narrowed her eyes into a small glare. He has to be stupid to give up a chance like this just for his pride. She looked as though she was about to make a retort, but she visibly held herself back from the urge. What is he doing? Kaminari asked confused. Is he trying to distract her or something? Sero added. Shinso saw that she was trying not to talk, showing that she knows how his quirk activates. No problem, just a little more aggravating and she will crack without even realizing. I must ask, how did some of the people in your class even make it into the hero course with such weak quirks? Monkey boy only has his tail, the midget can make sticky balls, there's even that girl whose quirk is just being invisible. How did they make it in while others with better quirks didn't? That seemed to have done the trick as Ashido looked extremely pissed off. Don't you dare talk about my friends, like was all she managed to shout before she suddenly cut off and became motionless. Her eyes looked blank and gazed over as if she was in a trance. What the heck just happened? Ashido is completely frozen out of nowhere. Is this Shinso's quirk? Present Mike shouted in shock. Aizawa's eyes just slightly narrowed as he looked at the Gen Ed student. Damn it. I warned her not to answer him, Ojiro exclaimed frustrated while gripping his hair. There we go. Now be a good little hero and walk out of bounds for me, Shinso commanded with a smirk. Ashido then turned around and began walking towards the boundary line. Her movements were slow like she was a zombie. After a few steps, her foot landed right outside the line. Ashido has stepped out of bounds. Shinso moves on to the next round. Midnight announced. Just then, focus returned to Ashido's eyes as she began to look around confused. What just happened? She asked. Finally looking down, she saw that she was now out of bounds. What? Why the hell was I doing? Thanks for the win, Shinso said while walking away. She looked at him and her feet and back again with an incredulous look. Damn it. She whined as she walked back to the stands. When she got there, the girls quickly started to encourage her that she shouldn't get too sad over it. True to their advice, the pink girl only took 2 minutes to return to her upbeat personality. At least I was able to get this far. I just wished I followed Ojiro's advice to not answer him. Sorry, she said with a sheepishly expression. Don't worry. I understand that you were mad when he taunted you and made fun of us. It's nice that you have that much faith in us, Ojiro dismissed with a wave. Yeah, but he's going to get it in his next match. Todoroki is gonna flash freeze him before he could even say a word, she shouted with a devilish smirk. Most of the class laughed at her over-enthusiasm for someone to lose. I know that he was wrong for making fun of our classmates, but he sounded very emotional with that last taunt. Either he's a great actor, or he might have actually meant that, Midoriya thought to himself. He wanted to discuss it with Ojiro, but the next match was starting. Now for the 7th match. From Class 1A, he has a French complex and a need to stand out. We have Yuga Aoyama. Aoyama practically strutted towards the stage with sparkles somehow coming off his body, and from Class 1B, the assassin who is in touch with nature, we have Ibara Shiozaki. The thorn-haired Shiozaki walked delicately as if she didn't want to disturb nature by walking too loudly. "Excuse me, but why did you call me an assassin?" She asked loudly enough so that people could hear her. "I certainly do not wish to be labeled as someone who takes another's life. I believe that all lives have value, under the name of our Lord and Savior." Sorry. Present Mike shouted guiltily. After the two stepped onto the stage, Midnight gave the starting announcement. "Let the 7th match begin." "I hope you forgive me, mademoiselle, but I simply outshine you in this match," Aoyama said before putting his hands behind his head, art of seduction. With that, a blue sparkly laser shot out of his belt and fired straight towards Shiozaki. Surprisingly, she looked very calm about it. Before the laser reached her, she turned around and clapped her hands together as though she was praying. Suddenly, her vibe-like hair stabbed into the ground and burrowed into it. A moment later, a shield made completely of vines sprouted from the ground and intercepted the laser. It struck the shield and only caused a little burn to form. "Touché, but I shall not be faltered that easily," Aoyama said while preparing another shot. Right before he did, vines shot up from underneath his feet. It slithered around his body and wrapped him up in a tight cocoon that only left his head visible. Mon ami. This is quite the predicament. Nothing that my naval laser can't fix. A subdued blue glow flashed in the middle of the vines, but they remained intact. A few more glows later, Aoyama looked extremely sick with his face turning an unhealthy shade of purple. He stopped trying to break out and surrendered. Aoyama surrenders. That means Shiozaki will move into the next round. After he was let down, he immediately rushed off to the bathroom. "Wow, that's a pretty strong quirk," Kirishima said. "She doesn't even have to move around to block attacks and take down her opponent. She is going to be troublesome to defeat," Shoji commented offhandedly. While discussing future strategy is important, let's not forget that we still have one more match, Ida called out while doing his hand chops. "That's right. Uraka and I have to go," Midoriya exclaimed while getting up. He quickly hopped over a few seats to reach the walkway that lead to the field. Uraka was following behind him at a bit of a slower pace. They walked for a bit before coming to the place where they have to separate. "Hey Deku?" Uraka suddenly said. "Yeah, Uraka? I want to say that I won't lose to you," she said with a determined face. "Same here. Make sure you give it your all," he said back with a thumbs up. They then headed off to their respective entrance to the field and made their way out to the stage. And now, for the 8th and final match of the round. From Class 1A, she has a cute face and the power to make anything a space simulation. We have Ochako Uraka. Uraka had a smile that showed she was determined to win, and also from Class 1A, we have the MVP and wild card of this entire festival with his unpredictable arsenal of abilities. We have Izuku Midoriya. Midoriya also looked determined and quite confident, something that was only seen occasionally by his classmates. Now, let the match begin. Uraka immediately started running towards Midoriya with her hands at her sides. "Bring it on, Deku," she shouted. "I figured you would try to get in close to use your quirk on me," he said before aiming his cannon and firing off shots. She started to dart left and right to avoid them. Most of them were dodged while a few managed to hit her. The best they did was slow her down for a moment before charging back full force. Midoriya then started to run to the side while still facing towards her. He continued firing regular shots. She chased after him while still trying to dodge his attacks. It went on like that for a few seconds before he stopped firing. He was still running, but he made no attempt to attack. He must have some sort of strategy. I wonder what he's planning? Uraka thought suspiciously as she kept running at the same pace while being cautious. Then, he started to slow down. It was gradual as he kept getting slower and letting Uraka get closer. That practically confirms that he's baiting her to get close. Knowing this, she runs a little faster towards him while also being attentive to dodge as he makes a sudden attack. When she got close enough, he quickly raised his left arm and fired another shot. Instead of the small yellow ball, it was the big blue blast that he used against Bakugo in the combat trials. He must have stopped firing so he could charge it up. Too bad I saw this coming. Uraka thought as she narrowly sidestepped the attack. Her body was slightly facing to the side so she could avoid the blast, but it turned out to be her mistake. She had taken her eyes off Midoriya for just a moment, and the next she was hit by an explosion from behind her. The blast had sent her painfully rolling on the ground. Once she stopped, she looked up to see Midoriya in his explosion form. "Remember, never take your eyes off your opponent," he advised while raising his arm to send another barrage. Wow, that was actually a pretty simple yet effective move. A distraction followed up with an attack, Ojiro commented. "Damn nerd, using my quirk like he owns it." Bakugo growled quite loudly. "Chill Bakubro, it's not like he's disrespecting you by using it. You should actually be quite honored by how much he uses it," Kirishima said in an attempt to calm him down by stroking his ego. It however had the opposite effect as Bakugo yelled how he would be useless without using his quirk. Back to the fight, Uraka just barely avoided the explosions that detonated right here she was just at. She had to be more careful on how she made her moves. That distraction he made was good enough to shift her focus away from him, and that resulted in this. It would be quite difficult to be able to touch him as he's actively keeping her away from his body. The only way she could think to do it catch him off guard or distracted. He quickly changed to his earjack form and started firing sound waves. This form was very good long-range attacks that are likely to hit. Each sound wave is wide enough that dodging them was very difficult. True to his observations, Uraka was getting hit more by the sound than the regular shots. Every time they hit, it would cause her to stumble back and cover her ears. However, she still kept on running towards him. It has to take a pretty strong will to be able to endure that and still keep moving. When she got close, he changed to his explosion form and launched explosives at the ground in front of her. He didn't want to directly hit her with explosions, so he opted to just using explosions to knock her back. The explosives detonated and blew up the ground where they landed. A big cover of smoke was blocking him from seeing where Uraka had landed. Suddenly, he saw something flying out of the smoke right towards him. He changed to his earjack form and fired another sound wave at it. It hit it and caused the smoke around it to blow away. Instead of Uraka, what laid on the ground was the jacket that was a part of their PE uniform. Wait, if that's her jacket, then where? He was thinking while lowering his arm. Then, he felt something, someone moving behind him, and it was getting quite close. Reacting on instinct, he ducked down a little to avoid the hand that was reaching for his shoulder. He then grabbed with both hands, yanked it forward, and used the momentum to flip Uraka over him and onto the ground on her back. Ow! She yelped when she hit the ground. He quickly grabbed her other hand and held both of them together using his right hand. Using his left, he aimed the buster right at her face. "Do you yield?" he asked. She looked up at the cannon pointing right at her face and immediately tried moving her hands. It was futile as he had a strong grip on them and made sure that he held them in a way that she couldn't touch him with 5 fingers. After a couple of seconds of struggling, she stopped and slumped down. "I surrender," she said loudly enough for Midnight to hear. "Uraka has surrendered. That means Midoriya moves on to the next round," she announced. Midoriya quickly let her go and helped her up. She said a quick thanks and both of them walked back to their class. When they got there, they were congratulating them. "That was an awesome fight. So manly," Kirishima yelled while slapping Midoriya on the back. "You put up a good fight, Ochako. You almost got him at the end with that distraction," Ribetsu said in a flat tone. "Thanks, I just wasn't expecting him to react so quickly," Uraka replied while scratching her head. "Still, you really had me on the ropes. Had I not reacted quick enough, you would have touched me and floated me out," Midoriya said with a small smile. She returned it as the two of them sat down. Kirishima left since he has to go down for his tie-breaker match against Tetsu. It turned out that it was just a simple arm wrestling match. Though, the fact how they were gripping the block of concrete hard enough to crack showed it was more than just simple. In the end, Kirishima won when cracks formed in Tetsu's arm. It also led to them starting some form of bromance as they acknowledged each other as manly men. When he got back, they showed the bracket to remind the remaining 8 students how they would be going up against. Kirishima vs. Ida. Bakugo vs. Tokoyami. Todoroki vs. Shinso. Shiozaki vs. Midoriya. Shiozaki. I need to be careful of her hair or else she might trap me in them like Aoyama. Though, I think I have a good quirk to counter it, Midoriya thought with contemplating expression. If he were to beat her in their match, that means that for the 3rd round he might be facing Todoroki. He hoped both of them make it to that point, because he had to fight him to settle the challenge he made in the hallway. Chapter 15. They took a brief intermission after the first set to give some resting period for the fighters. Most of the fighters choose to talk with their classes to ease up built-up anxiety for the next round, while a few others like Todoroki choose to go by themselves. Man! I can't wait for the round to start. I always wanted to test my skills against one of you guys in a fight, Kirishima shouted enthusiastically. That doesn't matter, shitty hair. The only thing important is that I'm going to beat your sorry asses, Bakugo yelled back angrily. Come on Kachan, we're all trying to win this. There's no need to get that worked up about it, Midoriya said to try and calm his explosive classmate. Unfortunately, it had the opposite effect that he wanted. Shut up, Deku. I'm already pissed off that I can't beat both you and Icy Hot together because they separated us. That means I can only fight one of you if you make it to the damn finals. So either of you better make it so I can take you down myself. He retorted loudly. Bakugo. Such behavior is inexcusable in this competition. Haven't you know anything about sportsmanship? Ida scolded. Sportsmanship is for pansies like you. All that I care about is that they bring their A game so I can show I'm the strongest without a doubt when I beat them, he said while plopping down back into his seat. That's probably the nicest thing I've ever heard him say, Midoriya thought with a skeptical look. So rude, yet so manly apparently, Kirishima realized the same exact thing as well. Hey Deku, you're going up against that girl from 1B with the vine hair, right? What do you plan to do? Uraka asked. Huh? Well, I think that I have to avoid getting caught in her vines like Aoyama. That also means I probably have to get in close to land an attack on her, Midoriya explained while having his hand on his chin. Don't fret too much, Midoriya. I'm sure that you will win your match, Ida encouraged. Thanks, Ida, he replied back with a smile. I hope you do well in your fight against Kirishima as well. Tokoyami, what are you going to do about Bakugo? Ojiro asked his bird-headed classmate. I do know that I'm going to have a very difficult time fighting him, he responded. What makes you say that? Bakugo may be strong, but you are quite powerful yourself, Shoji asked curiously. You shall understand when we begin our fight. The cryptic answer left the two of them slightly confused and even more curious. Though, it seemed that only Koda and Midoriya understood as they were giving him sympathetic looks. After a few more minutes of them talking, the intermission had ended and they were ready to start the next set. Okay everyone. We are now in the second set of the tournament and I can't wait to see how these students will do. Any thoughts, Eraserhead? Present Mike boomed while looking over to his co-host. They're doing okay, Aizawa said with a deadpan voice. You heard the man, even he thinks the students are doing amazingly well. Present Mike continued while Aizawa sighed in annoyance. Now let's get this started. Will the next competitors please make your way onto the field? Well, wish me luck guys, Kirishima said. Sero, Ashido, and Kaminari cheered for him in response while Bakugo just gave an affirmative grunt. I hope you two will be cheering me on, Ida said. Midoriya and Uraka gave him thumbs up with big smiles. A few seconds later, the two were making their way onto the field. For the first match, we have the manly-spirited and bodied Kirishima going up against the speedy Ida. I wonder how this match will turn out. Present Mike shouted. Hey Ida, let's have an awesome match, Kirishima yelled with a huge grin. Yes, I feel the exact same way. Ida responded with his own grin. Okay, let first match begin. Midnight announced. Ida immediately kneeled into a starting position with the air around his engines began to shift around. Recipro burst, he shouted before zooming off towards Kirishima. He was essentially a navy blue blur to the naked eye. Right before he could run into him, Kirishima quickly activated his hardening and dug his feet into the ground. A moment later, Ida slammed right into him and began pushing him towards the boundary line. They both grunted in pain at the painful collision of ramming into each other. Normally, this would have been enough to push anyone out of bounds with little difficulty. However, Kirishima was able to halt them both right before he went out. His feet were digging into the cement and holding firmly against the force Ida was pushing with. Nice try, Ida. But I won't go out that easily, he shouted before raising his hardened arm and decking him right in the face. That knocked Ida back a couple of feet away and left him dazed for a few seconds. Kirishima took that opportunity to charge and land more hits on him. He was able to punch him in the gut and the face again before Ida backed away quickly. Whoa, that was pretty close. Had Kirishima not used his hardening in time, Ida would have pushed him out, Midoriya commented to himself. Show him who's boss, Kirishima, Ashido yelled loudly so that almost everyone could hear her. Don't give up, Ida, Uraka shouted, only more quieter than Ashido. Back to the fight, Kirishima had then taken the initiative and started to charge Ida. Ida was trying to back away as quickly as possible to avoid getting hit, but it didn't work too well. Punches would occasionally land on the face or in the gut and each visibly wore him. Every once in a while, he would manage to counterattack with a swift kick to the head which usually would hit and knock a Kirishima to the floor. Though he immediately got back up afterwards. They kept doing this pattern for about 2 minutes before they appeared to be quite tired. Both of them were breathing heavily and had quite a lot of injuries from attacks. "You know, you're a manly fighter," Ida Kirishima panted with a small grin. "I thank you for the compliment," Ida replies with a similar grin, "though, I say it's time we finish this." After that, he started to run towards Kirishima. Kirishima quickly put up his arms to be ready to block any attack that comes to him. Once Ida reached him, he jumped into the air, spun around, and threw a roundhouse kick to the head. Kirishima hardened both his head and arms to block. When the leg hit, Kirishima was sent sliding back a few feet, though mostly unharmed. "Gah!" Ida cries in pain the moment his leg made impact with the arms. The same couldn't be said for him though. Turns out trying to kick something as hard as rock with your bare leg wasn't the best idea. Ida fell to the ground and was clutching his hurt leg. He tried to get up, but his leg was too hurt to properly stand up on. Kirishima noticed his opponent distracted and decided to take that opportunity. He charged towards him one more time and punched him right in the face. This blow caused Ida to crumple to the ground unconscious. Ida has been knocked out. That means Kirishima moves on to the next round. Midnight announced. "Yeah," Kirishima yelled as he raised his fist in triumph. "Ah man. I was hoping Ida would win that." Uraka sighed as she slumped in her seat. "Still better than the fight with Hatsume," Ribitsu said with a straight face. As medic robots carried Ida off the field, Kirishima came up a few moments later. He still had a huge grin on his face from winning the fight. "Man, that was an awesome match. Ida was super strong and he almost got me a few times," he exclaimed. "He is strong, but you still beat him," Ashido shouted back while giving him a high five. "Thanks. Now that I'm moving on, that means I'm either going to face Bakugo or Tokoyami," Kirishima said while looking at both of them. "What do you mean either? I'm going to roast that chicken so badly that I can have a victory lunch when I win this entire thing," Bakugo shouted while getting out of his seat. Tokoyami and a few of the others looked slightly disturbed at his declaration. "If you are going to do it, then you two better get down there since you're up now," Sero pointed out. After being told to shut up, Bakugo and Tokoyami made their way to the field. A few moments later, they were on the stage. Now for the second match. We've got the elusive and mysterious Tokoyami going against the short-tempered and trigger-happy Bakugo. Present Mike shouted. "Shut the hell up and start the match already," Bakugo shouted angrily. "Okay then, let the second match begin," Midnight announced. "Dark Shadow," Tokoyami yelled. Immediately, Dark Shadow appeared and launched towards Bakugo. Right before it rammed into him, he let out an explosion in front of him. It caused Dark Shadow to recoil in pain and back away. As it was doing that, Bakugo saw the hesitation and made his move by blasting himself towards the two. He was able to get past Dark Shadow and was close enough to fire an explosion at Tokoyami, but it quickly came back and blocked the attack. "Gah!" Dark Shadow yelled in pain. "Hold on, Dark Shadow. Try to deal with it for now," Tokoyami encouraged. It nodded its head and charged back again. "Man, things aren't looking that good for Tokoyami," Sato said. "Yeah, Bakugo is really not letting up with those attacks. I almost forgot how aggressive he was when he only tossed Kaminari out of bounds last round," Jiro commented while Kaminari grumbled silently. "This matchup is just not in his favor," Midoriya whispered to himself so that no one could hear. Back to the fight, Dark Shadow just took another explosion. "Damn it. That damn shadow is starting to annoy me," Bakugo yelled in annoyance. He then started to release consecutive explosions at him to drive Dark Shadow away. Each one made it shrink further and further away from the blonde boy. It tried to take a swipe at him, but Bakugo quickly jumped back to avoid it. Dark Shadow then tried ramming into him again, but he was ready. Bringing his hands together, he started making explosions between his hands that looked different than usual. "Stun grenade," he shouted as a bright flash came out of his hands. It engulfed the entire stage and prevented anyone from seeing what had happened. When the light died down after a few seconds, Bakugo was holding Tokoyami down by the beak. "Did you know its weakness was light?" Tokoyami asked weakly. "Of course, anyone would after a few seconds of fighting it," Bakugo snarled with a scary smile. "Then, I surrender." Tokoyami has surrendered. That means Bakugo moves on to the next round. Bakugo then got off of him and walked off the stage without even a backwards glance. Tokoyami got up on his own and followed his classmates to where the rest were sitting. "Hey, That was still a pretty good fight, Sero said to try and cheer him up. Yeah, at least you were able to fight him unlike someone else, Jiro smirked while not so discreetly looking at Kaminari. Must you keep bringing that up? He groaned while laying his face in his hands. She started to snicker at that and he groaned even more. I very much appreciate the encouragement, but it is all right. I was going against someone who had an advantage and I lost so because of that. I have no shame, Tokoyami said while taking his seat. Damn, so manly. Well, this means that I'm going up against Bakugo in the next match. I hope you put up a good match, Kirishima said with a huge grin. I'll murder you was all he got in response. After he and his friends laughed it off, the next two competitors were coming up to the stage. Now for the third match. We have the secretive and interesting Shinso against the quiet yet powerful Todoroki. Present Mike shouted. Once they stepped onto the stage, they greeted each other with silence and cold stares. Let the third match begin. Midnight announced. The first person to make a move was actually Shinso. So, you're the one who they say is the strongest student out of all the first years? Shinso taunted with a small frown. Todoroki chose to keep quiet and not say a thing. Yep, definitely trying to get him to say something, Hagakure commented. The others nodded in agreement. Don't fall for his trick, Todoroki, Ashido yelled. That just depends if there's anything that can make him angry, Ojiro said with a small sweat drop. Must be nice having such a powerful quirk? It seems that if you have those, you're a shoe-in for the hero course, he continued with a bit of a mocking tone. Now, heck, with your quirk and your father being Endeavor, you can get in without even taking the entrance exam. Now Todoroki's eyes narrowed upon hearing the name. Shinso noticed it and chuckled a little. Oh, did I hit a nerve? Does the all-powerful student not want me to talk about his father because he's too good for that? Todoroki was clenching his hands very tightly, but wasn't saying a thing. He quickly glanced at someone in the audience and then turned back. Midoriya saw this and followed his gaze. Right where he looked turned out to be a hulking man whose body seemed to be on fire. There was even fire lining his face and hair. Anyone would be able to recognize the man as the number 2 hero, Endeavor. He had a deep scowl that shows his displeasure towards something, which might have been Todoroki as he was constantly looking at him. TCH, aren't you gonna defend yourself? Shinso asked, getting impatient and a little frustrated at how nothing was working. Then, his eyes widened in revelation and a small grin formed on his face. You know, it's interesting how the first two things people probably notice about you is your hair and that scar. Todoroki's eyes widened in shock and then it changed from shock to livid anger. You could feel the ice-cold hatred coming off of him. Ah, so that's a sensitive subject for you. That means someone else might have caused that, like your dad or your Mo. Shinso wasn't able to finish what he was going to say before his entire body was completely covered in ice. He was flash frozen within a second and unable to do anything afterwards. Back with Todoroki, he was just glaring at the ice. Shinso has been incapacitated. Todoroki moves on to the next round. Midnight announced. He then walked up and began to melt the ice off. It took a few seconds until Shinso was thawed out of his icy prison. Don't you ever mess with things you don't know, he spat coldly before marching off stage. Shinso had an upset frown as he got up and walked away as well. Damn, that was tense, Jiro said awkwardly. I know, like that. Shinso was really trying to push his buttons. That guy is definitely trouble, Kaminari said with a frown. A few of the others nodded in agreement. Guys, let's not write him off as bad just yet. That was probably the only way for him to use his quirk in this situation. He probably didn't mean any real harm, Midoriya reasoned. Fine, but I'm happy that I was avenged, Ashido shouted in glee. Deku, you should probably be going down there for your fight, Uraka suggested. Midoriya nodded and got up to go. Can you please avenge me as well? Aoyama called out before he left. Sure, he replied sheepishly before walking off. He able to walk to the field more quickly than the last round since he already went this way. When he stepped out into the open, the crowd began to cheer a little bit more loudly than they did for the others. Had he already made that big of a performance with the obstacle race and cavalry battle? Either way, he wasn't going to lose this match. Now for the fourth match. We have the calm and serene Shiozaki going against the crowd favorite Midoriya. Present Mike shouted. Then, you could somewhat hear Aizawa in the background asking him to be quiet for a minute. Well, that confirms my theory, Midoriya thought when he heard that. When he stepped onto the stage, Shiozaki was standing on the opposite end. She seemed to be praying as her eyes were closed and her hands were clasped together. Okay, let the fourth match begin. Immediately, Shiozaki's hair started to move and it shot into the ground. Trying to capture me like she did with Aoyama. Well, I'm not going to let that catch me that easily, Midoriya thought as he changed into his engine form and boosted forward. The vine sprouted up from where he just was and grabbed at the air. He was quickly sliding on the ground towards Shiozaki and was about to shove her out when a big wall of vines appeared right in front of his. He crashed into it quite painfully as some thorns pricked his face. "I must admit, you are quite strong and fast. But I shall defeat you in the name of the Lord," she said calmly before the vines of the wall untangled and tried to wrap around him. He just barely avoided being encased by the vines by boosting backwards at the last moment. When he was able to get a safe distance away from her, he dug his feet into the ground to stop himself. They both paused their actions to stare at each other, observing for when the other makes a move. This stare down lasted a few seconds, then Midoriya's eyes widened and he swung his legs to the side and boosted to the left. A moment later, vines shot up from that spot. "Wow, how'd he know that they were below him?" Sero asked in surprise. "I think it was some sort of scanning ability. Deku told me about it one time," Uraka tried explaining while remembering. "Well, it's good that he had it or else he would have been trapped," Yaoyorozu commented. Back to the fight, the odds have tipped in Shiozaki's favor as she had Midoriya on the ropes. He was constantly moving around the stage in erratic movements to avoid being ensnared by the vines that came out of the ground. He had decided to change to his normal form to move around as the engine form was difficult to make quick changes in direction. "This isn't good. She's not letting me have any time to breathe with these constant attacks. If I stop for just a moment, she'll just capture and end the match," Midoriya thought urgently as he dove out of the grasp of sprouting vines. As he did, he felt something tightly wrap around and grip his leg. Turning around, he saw that it was single vine that was separate from the clusters that were sent towards him. He immediately grabbed it and tried yanking it off of him with a sense of urgency. However, it was too late for him. More vines sprouted around him and started to wrap around his entire body. His struggling became more urgent as he was thrashing his body around, trying to break free from the trap. It proved to be futile as more and more of the vines covered up his body and it almost reached up to his head. With one more layer, the vines had completely encased Midoriya. "No!" Ida and Uraka yelled. Most of the other students just gave shocked and sad looks for their classmate. They mostly expected him to win the fight with how strong his quirk was. Bakugo was simply just pissed off how someone else beat at him before he could. After a few seconds of nothing happening with the plant cocoon, Midnight raised her whip to make the announcement. "Midoriya has been incapacitated. That means Shiozaki Mofwoosh," she started to say before a plume of flames erupted out of the vines. Everyone was shocked at the sudden fire, especially Shiozaki as she watched her vines get burned. Coming out of the vine trap, Midoriya jumped out with only a few scratches on his face and armor. His suit was now an even split of white on his right side and red on his left. The flamethrower on his left hand was glowing dully, showing its recent activation. "Don't count me out just yet," Midoriya yelled. "Well, looks like Midoriya was able to get out before I finished talking, so he's still in," she said with an amused grin. "Oh, thank God," Uraka said while slumping in her chair in relief. "I almost thought he lost." "Yes, that was too close for comfort in my opinion. He's lucky that he used that ability in time or else he would have not been moving along," Ida agreed with an equally relieved expression. "Hey, the suit colors are just like Todoroki's hair. You think that he's using his quirk?" Kaminari asked after noticing it. "Probably, though he hasn't used that form in front of us before, not even in the USJ," Jiro replied. Back to the fight, Midoriya was using the ice gun on his right arm to freeze the ground. The plan was so that Shiozaki wouldn't be able to have her vines hide underground and pop up unexpectedly. This was working out as she was now launching the full mass of her hair towards him. He simply responded by raising his left arm and sent a wave of fire to intercept the vines. They quickly burned the ends of it, making those parts infunctional to use. She pulled her damaged vines away and tried to form a barrier around herself to stop him from landing any hits on her. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to finish closing it up before a white and blue blur slammed into her and sent her flying off the stage. Shiozaki is out of bounds. That means Midoriya moves on to the next round. Midnight announced for real this time. "Hey, are you alright? I was wondering if your hair will be alright after part of it being burned," Midoriya asked as he walked over to her and helped her up. "Do not worry. The burning only got the ends, that means it can grow back if we cut off the burnt parts and give it some time to grow back," Shiozaki explained reassuringly. Midoriya sighed in relief as he saw some of the medic robots roll onto the field with a stretcher to carry her away. After that, he went back to his class to see their reactions. "Man, that fight was even more manly than the one on the first round," Kirishima exclaimed. "Geez Deku, you were really cutting it close with that last move. That nearly gave me a heart attack," Uraka whined while lightly punching him on the arm. Sorry, but I was saving Todoroki's quirk as a last resort since I was worried it could mess with her hair, Midoriya sheepishly explained. How is it that Midoriya actually takes the time to worry about his opponent while Bakugo just goes in like he's trying to kill them? Sero asked with a sarcastic tone. The fuck did you say, soy sauce? Bakugo yelled while standing up in his seat. It took the combined efforts of both Kirishima and Sato to restrain Bakugo from lunging at Sero and blasting his face off. Sero and Kaminari were on the floor laughing at how pissed Bakugo was, which only proved to provoke him even more. Let me at him. I'll wipe those stupid fucking grins right off their faces, he shouted very loudly. Everyone close to him just scooted away to avoid getting caught up in his tantrum. Well, would you look at that? Class 1A is acting like a bunch of immature babies. A voice said from the side. They all stopped what they were doing and looked over to the left. Peeking over the barrier that separated the seating sections was Monoma. He was looking as condescending as he did in the cavalry battle. Your class is supposed to be so much better than ours, but here you are causing such a ruckus. Looks like Class 1B is truly the superior class. He ranted while laughing. Better? Who said we were supposed to be the better class? Ojiro asked confused. Obviously because of that villain attack. You think just because you faced villains, you're celebrities that are above the rest, Monoma spat. Hey! Shut up you B-lister dumbass, Bakugo yelled while still being restrained. TCH. You guys need to get off high horse and our class will do it for Ga. He was saying before he was cut off by a swift karate chop to the back of the neck. He slumped down to the floor and was replaced by a girl with orange hair. Sorry about him. He tends to get riled up about this topic. Just ignore him, she said with an apologetic smile. She then dropped back down and dragged Monoma away from them. All of Class 1A was just silent in confusion as they tried processing what just happened. That was awkward, Hagakure said, breaking the tension. What did we ever do to that guy? The only time I've seen him was when he took our headbands in the cavalry battle. Even then, he was the one who provoked Bakugo into chasing him down, Kaminari explained. He sure does seem insistent that his class is better, Sero said with a sweat drop. He may say so, but Kirishima and Midori took down the two kids from their class, Ashido said with a grin. Kirishima grinned as well and Midoriya muttered how it wasn't a big deal. Okay folks. With the second round out of the way, we are moving on to the semifinals. Our 4 remaining competitors have shown impressive skill to make it this far into the festival. Let's see how they match up with each other and who will make it to the finals and win this whole thing. Present Mike practically screamed into the microphone. After that, the brackets were shown on the big screen as a reminder to the crowd. Kirishima vs Bakugo. Todoroki vs Midoriya. Ah heck yeah. I've been waiting to fight you ever since this festival started, Kirishima shouted. Then I hope you're prepared to lose, shitty hair. Bakugo retorted back. Midoriya was looking around to see if Todoroki was anywhere in the near them as he didn't bother to seat in their area. After a few seconds of searching, he found the dual-hair boy standing against the wall. He seemed to have been watching him first as his gaze was on him and a fierce, loathing expression was on his face. They held eye contact for just a moment before Todoroki turned away and walked off. Why is he so angry at me? Midoriya thought with a frown. The only thing Todoroki said to him was how he was going to beat his copied version of his quirk with only his ice and how he refused to use his left side. Maybe he could use their battle to somehow talk with him as he doesn't seem to enjoy normal conversation. Anyway, Kirishima and Bakugo had just left to go to their fight and he was interested to see how they would do against each other.